What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 10 Ma. Chapter 173 Kizaru. I really can't teach your grandson. Open black lens bracket 3/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. At the same time, that's when Layfon was just coming out of the gate, ready to take on this grand challenge. The huge wave surrounding this matter has already spread and swept across the entire Marineford, and it has become a hot topic of discussion in the past few days. Today is the time when the challenge is about to begin. Hot discussions on these topics have spread in an endless stream. The whole Marineford has been set off a huge wave because of this. Compared with the previous few days, there are more turbulent waves. The challenge is about to officially begin. 3 days have passed, and the challenge that Vice Admiral Garp said should start, right? Just today, Layfon, the 7-year-old grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, is about to face the formal marine challenge of most of Marineford. My god, can a 7-year-old really withstand the pressure? I don't know, although I think that as the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, this person must have something extraordinary. But in the final analysis, he is still too young after all. How strong can he be at only 7 years old? And what he needs to face is the challenge of half of Marineford's official marine. In addition, Vice Admiral Garp only restricts Vice Admiral from challenging, and does not restrict Rear Admiral from challenging. That is to say, a strong person at the Rear Admiral level can completely challenge a 7-year-old brat. Can this brat really stand up to the challenge from the Rear Admiral? Hanging. There was a lot of talk. All kinds of remarks spread in the streets and alleys of Marineford. All in all, no one is optimistic about Layfon. Here lies the age gap. How strong can a 7-year-old be? Anyway, the hundreds of thousands of official Marines in Marineford don't think so. A 7-year-old child can be powerful enough to shake Rear Admiral. This is too spooky. It's almost impossible to happen. If a 7-year-old child is strong enough to shake the Rear Admiral, then all of this will greatly subvert cognition. I don't know how this farce will end with Vice Admiral Garp. If Vice Admiral Garp's grandson really loses, then Vice Admiral Garp will have to face 100,000 of our Marine soldiers. A public apology. Everyone felt a little dazed. Let the Marine hero make a public apology. They couldn't imagine the scene. Pit Lord, this 7-year-old brat killed Vice Admiral Garp. No, I really don't know where Vice Admiral Garp has the confidence to show such confidence in his 7-year-old grandson. To know, this 7-year-old brat has to face a challenge that is nearly half of Marineford. Among them, even a strong person at the Rear Admiral level can challenge. How can he win? There is no doubt that we will lose. Not only did most of them not know the official Marine of Layfon, they felt no suspense about the outcome of this grand challenge. Even Marine who knew Layfon, such as Kebi, Beru Meber, Captain Marine Pakuto, and the thousands of Marines on the warship that Garp was in charge of, they all felt a little guilty. Although they are very clear, Layfon is very strong. But their understanding of Layfon is only limited to Layfon being able to defeat Colonel Naval Headquarters, that's all. But above Colonel Naval Headquarters, there are Marine Commodore, Marine Rear Admiral and other powerhouses. They can't imagine. Layfon, who is only 7 years old, can really defeat a powerhouse like Marine Rear Admiral. The possibility of this seems very low. Vice Admiral Garp, is it too big this time? Kebi and Belumbo both thought in their hearts. Layfon can indeed kill Marine Colonel Pakuto in seconds, but there is still a big gap between the strength of the Colonel and Commodore. Also, advertisement. The difference in strength between Colonel and Rear Admiral is even greater. Let Layfon, who is only 7 years old, to meet the challenge of Marine Rear Admiral. Isn't this inevitable? Pokato also had deep worries in his heart. Even though he has followed Garp for many years, he still can't figure out what Garp is thinking in his heart, and he doesn't limit the challenge of Rear Admiral only in the middle as the limit of Vice Admiral. If Rear Admiral is restricted, Pokato will still think that Layfon has some chances of winning. As for now, in the absence of restrictions on Rear Admiral, Pokato is very fair. Judging from the information obtained so far, a conclusion can be drawn. Layfon's odds are infinitely close to 0. It's about to start. Feeling the lively atmosphere of Marineford, Pokato also left the residence. This grand challenge has undoubtedly become the most lively event in Marineford in recent years. Marineford, which has been boring for a long time, ushered in such a grand event, which naturally attracted hundreds of thousands of official Marines, who were looking forward to it. More and more people are paying attention to this matter. In Naval Headquarters, Vice Admiral with some veteran qualifications is not available. Even Akainu, who has always been serious and meticulous, began to pay attention to the movement of this matter. As for Kizaru and Aokiji, the two lazy admirals, of course, have been paying close attention to every move of the matter. Originally, Kizaru didn't intend to pay attention, and thought that if he had the time, he might as well go to sleep. But ever since Dong Yuan became Layfon's swordsmanship instructor, he began to pay more attention to what happened to Chongfang. And Aokiji. Aokiji swore in his heart that day. Never inquire about this matter again. But after all, the law of inescapable truth. The other side. Marshal's office. It's a buzzing moment in Marineford. The atmosphere here is extraordinarily quiet and comfortable, forming a very strong contrast with the noisy atmosphere outside. Rarely, Sengoku did not sit on the seat, but walked by the window, looking at the whole picture of Marineford, feeling the faint voices coming from his ears. Marineford. It's been a long time, it hasn't been this lively. This made Sengoku feel a little emotional for a moment. This kind of Marineford is the Marineford in his mind. Freshness. Everywhere is full of life. It's not like the Marineford of the past, lifeless, not at all what a naval headquarters should be. At this time, without warning, the door was roughly pushed open. Boom. There was a loud noise, deafening. It was as if the door had been kicked open violently. There was a slight shake in the entire office. I see. Garp, who was outside the door, walked in with big strides. You don't pay attention to your grandson's affairs, what are you doing here? Sengoku turned around, looking suspicious. No rush, I have already notified everyone. Tell them to rush to Marineford's number 7 training ground. The area there is large enough and can accommodate more people, so that more people can watch the trend and development of this challenge. The challenge starts from the training ground. Garp has it all sorted out. You feel unprecedented confidence in your grandson's strength. Advertisement. Sengoku has a strange expression on his face. He couldn't figure it out. Where did Garp get his confidence? Let a 7-year-old child face the challenge of half a Marineford, nearly 100,000 official Marines. And among them, does not limit the challenge of Rear Admiral. A 7-year-old kid, okay. No matter how genius or monster, it is impossible to accomplish these feats, right? That is, don't look at whose grandson it is. Garp laughed. Very suddenly, there were signs of weak creeping in the space. This is the trace fluctuation produced by the speed reaching ultimate. Then you can see it. A group of golden halos shone in from outside the window, condensed in the office, the golden halo shone dazzlingly, and a group of golden light gradually formed a figure of a person. This person, of course, is Admiral of Headquarters Kizaru. Besides Kizaru, who else has this kind of appearance? Kizaru, you brat, don't you know how to go through the right door? Garp growled in displeasure. The golden light dissipated. Kizaru, who was dressed in gold and a justice coat, stood in the marshal's office. Facing Garp's accusation and angry roar, Kizaru's wretched face showed a somewhat helpless expression. Vice Admiral Garp, while you are blaming others, may I trouble you to review yourself too? Why is the gate of the marshal's office repeatedly damaged? Isn't it because you always use the most violent means to kick it open every time, so every once in a while, the door of the marshal's office needs to be replaced? Although we didn't say hello, we came to the marshal's office. But anyway, at least we didn't damage anything in the marshal's office, did we? Kizaru, what are you doing here? Sengoku asked straight to the point. With Kizaru's lazy personality, he really didn't expect that the other party would have something to report when he came to him. There is one thing, after thinking about it, I still feel that it is better to tell you, lest you are not mentally prepared for what will happen next. 3.7 inches. Kizaru thought for a while and opened his mouth slowly. What's up? Sengoku pressed. There is something about Layfon, the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. Kizaru told the truth. Layfon, didn't this kid learn from you? How about it? After these 3 days, with my grandson's terrifying talent, his strength must have improved a lot. Garp came out of curiosity. It is about Layfon, of course he will inevitably feel curiosity and anticipation. Even Sengoku beside him was very curious about this. 3 days down. With the talent of a monster like Layfon, how much can the strength be improved? The strength has improved a lot. It's more than that. This is already usable, the strength has come in by leaps and bounds to describe it. More precisely, during the past 3 days, the strength of this little brat seemed to be on the hook. It has skyrocketed, and it may be more than 100 times. I never thought of it in my life anyway. In this world, there really are such terrifying genius monsters that defy common sense. Kizaru thought a lot in his heart, and in the end, everything turned into a wry smile. He looked at Garp's excited appearance, and spoke in a complicated and unspeakable tone. To be honest, Vice Admiral Garp, I really can't teach this grandson. Advertisement Chapter 174 Rear Admiral. Sengoku and Garp are stunned. Open black lens bracket 4/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Can't teach. What's the meaning? Garp froze. What's going on? It's so good, how come there is a sentence that can't be taught? It's not right. For the past 3 days, haven't you, Kizaru, been teaching my grandson Layfon? Now you tell me that you can't teach. Why did you go early? These 3 days, wouldn't it just be a waste of time? Not knowing why, Pooh began to panic. The old man bet on the title of Marine Hero, on Layfon, a brat. Now what the hell are you telling me? You can't teach. Wouldn't these 3 days have been wasted? The 3 days that the old man fought so hard for are gone like this. Garp's mind was a little confused. What the hell? Isn't this about driving yourself to a dead end? Kizaru, this kid, has a heart to kill. Perhaps aware of Garp's mood swings, Kizaru hurriedly explained. Actually, Vice Admiral Garp is not what you imagined. What is it like? Garp couldn't wait to ask. What's going on? Say an exact number, or let yourself have a psychological preparation. All in all, your grandson, your talent is really too high. What I can teach is limited, and I can't really teach him too much. His talent subverted my perception of those geniuses in the past. In contrast, those so-called geniuses, compared with your grandson Layfon, are simply a bunch of idiots. Kizaru took a deep breath. Whenever he recalled Layfon's horrible behavior that doubled his strength after sleeping, his mood would be shaken violently and could not be calmed down. This talent is simply too strong. It's outrageous. A 14 leap that doubles your strength when you sleep. Who can resist this? Anyway, Rao is Kizaru's psychological endurance, which has been overturned by Layfon over and over again. So, in the past 3 days, how much has Layfon's strength improved? Sengoku asked the question that concerned him the most. To this, Garp also looked sideways, staring at Kizaru. How much has it increased? Kizaru thought for a while, and said bitterly, hundreds of times, maybe far more. What the hell? Did you hear me wrong? Have auditory hallucinations? Up, hundreds of times. Garp and Sengoku stared at Kizaru with wide eyes. Is this a joke? In just 3 days, his strength has increased hundreds of times. Sure, right, is there such a situation? This horse is a monster. It's only 3 days, how can the strength be increased by hundreds of times? TV. Eat devil fruit. Besides the possibility of eating devil fruit, is there a second possibility? Non-existent. My grandson ate devil fruit. Garp couldn't help asking. This is also what Sengoku doubts in his heart. If it wasn't for eating devil fruit, how could it be so exaggerated? I thought so too at first. After all, only this reason can explain the many incredible things that happened to your grandson. Quote. Every day that passes, the strength of your grandson Layfon has almost doubled. I just realized that this is definitely not brought about by devil fruit. Devil fruit will not let a person's strength become so exaggerated and outrageous every other day. Advertisement. Ultimately, I can only think of one ridiculous reason. It can only be said that talent. Your grandson Layfon is endowed with an incomparably powerful, terrifying talent that will increase his strength several times every other day. Only this reason can explain it. All this happened to your grandson Layfon, all the horrible feats that shocked the world. Kizaru's tone was full of horror. To date, he obviously couldn't really calm down. There is no other reason. These things that happened to Layfon are really too subversive. With Kizaru's many years of experience, this is the first time he has experienced such a terrible thing. Naturally, it was understandable that his mood would still maintain such a vibration after a few days, it was really normal. Talent. Tell me on your horse. Every other day, a terrorist act whose strength has doubled several times. How can talent explain this? Sengoku looked confused. Talent, sure, and a talent so powerful that it is outrageous. This is so unscientific, seriously against the norm. Inexplicably become stronger several times after sleeping. Is there such a good thing? Why Mao himself never met? Why do people with such talent have to work so hard? Try to have a fart effect. Going this way every day, the strength inexplicably improved. What else is there to do? You can become stronger while lying down, who wants to work hard? Layfon, little brat, his strength has increased hundreds of times. Garp's eyes widened, his heart shaking. 3 days. In just 3 days, how the hell has his level of strength increased by 100 times? Even for Garp, the cognitive view at the moment has been subverted. Is this old man's grandson so emotional? Why has Mr. Mao never discovered it before? Wrong. It seems that this kid has always been so terrifying. But Kizaru's words still made Garp's mood full of shock. You're right, aren't you? Sengoku looked at Kizaru. Of course I can't make a mistake. I have witnessed and felt the growth of this little brat's strength with my own eyes. Kizaru's wretched face showed helplessness. Mistake. This possibility can basically be ruled out. Every other day, every other night, if this little brat disappears, his strength will be multiplied several times, and it may be more than that. How could he make a mistake in this kind of thing? Then tell me exactly, how far has his strength grown? Sengoku pressed. This is what he most urgently wants to know. The strength has been increased by hundreds of times, how strong is it? Sengoku couldn't judge, he could only stare at Kizaru, hoping that the latter would give him an answer. Garp also keeps an eye on Kizaru. Under the staring eyes of the two people with their donkey eyes wide open. Kizaru didn't tell you directly, but said with a strange face, your grandson, of course, has mastered observation haki after receiving my training. How strong is he now? The words fell. Garp, Sengoku was stunned. Knowledgeable. It's not right. This brat, obviously doesn't have a grasp of knowledge, does he? But this, what is this for? Garp, you. Sengoku looked at Garp. Don't look at me, I don't even know. Garp spoke hastily. He really didn't know at all that Layfon had mastered the matter of eroticism. Advertisement. Vice Admiral Garp, you really don't know, because the brat Layfon told me that he mastered the color of knowledge, but only mastered it that morning. Kizaru tells the whole truth. That morning, unexpectedly. Sengoku and Garp became more and more confused. Mastered observation haki in one morning. Although there were too many similar horror incidents happened to Layfon, Garp's mood was still shocked beyond words and could not be calmed down. Then doesn't that mean, this kid who has mastered the two-color haki, his strength can be said to have entered the threshold of the Marine Rear Admiral's strength class? Sengoku couldn't help blurting out. Two-color haki is the basic threshold to measure Marine Rear Admiral. Mastering the two-color haki means stepping into the strength class of Marine Rear Admiral. But Sengoku couldn't imagine it. A child who is only 7 years old has mastered two-color haki. Doesn't this mean that he has reached the power level of Rear Admiral? Obediently, real or fake, Sengoku's cognitive view has been strongly impacted over and over again. Yes, this brat, Layfon, has already stepped into the rank of Marine Rear Admiral. Moreover, it can be said with certainty that the strength of this brat is among the best in Marine Rear Admiral, belonging to the top class. Kizaru said in a very affirmative tone. Why? Garp and Sengoku, who were in a state of confusion, asked questions. If this brat had only mastered knowledge, I certainly wouldn't lose my composure. The point is, during these 3 days, this brat's overall strength can be described as soaring. Strength, speed, stamina. In all respects, this kid has improved like a monster. Every time I wake up, I will usher in a leap of doubling my strength. Then, one after another, Kizaru vented all the shock that had filled his heart for many days. Call. Kizaru let out a heavy breath. Finally found. 987 can vent this shock. For the past few days of holding back these things, Kizaru's whole body is not well. Now, after venting out, his mood team turned around. Ever since, without exception, both Garp and Sengoku were infected by Kizaru's shock. This moment, Garp only knows a little. The old man's grandson Layfon. Become Marine Rear Admiral. Do not. Wrong. Described in this way, it is relatively irregular. It should be said that the strength has reached the threshold of Marine Rear Admiral. And Kizaru described it as, in the Marine Rear Admiral, the strength is also among the top class. Of course Garp would not doubt Kizaru's words. During these 3 days, only Kizaru and Layfon have been fighting each other. If even Kizaru doesn't understand Layfon's strength, then basically, there is no second person who can understand Layfon's current strength level. Now that Kizaru has said that Layfon's strength has reached the Rear Admiral level, and is considered the best in the Rear Admiral, there must be nothing wrong. 3 days. But he still didn't expect it. But Layfon's strength has ushered in earth-shaking changes in these short 3 days. In just 3 days, Layfon has grown itself to such terrifying proportions. Not only is he just entering the Rear Admiral, but he is also the top powerhouse in the Rear Admiral. Things went way beyond Garp and Sengoku's imagination. Garp only felt that things were developing a little dreamlike. This caused both Garp and Sengoku's worldviews to be shaken unprecedentedly. Only 3 days. Sengoku couldn't help but speak. Even for the two of them, veterans who have experienced many battles, these words of Yuan were deeply shocked. How short is 3 days? It took only 3 days to go from the strength of Commodore to the top of Rear Admiral. Become the best in Rear Admiral. Garp, your grandson, seems a bit too monster. Although he is full of confidence in Layfon, he believes that Layfon can successfully single out half of Marineford's challenge. Hearing this, Garp agreed. This riding horse is an out-and-out monster. Is that human being? Advertisement Chapter 175, Big Brothers Gather. The challenge begins. Open black lens bracket 5/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. After calming down a bit, Garp looked at Sengoku with a weird expression. Sengoku, do you remember what you promised me earlier? What? Sengoku doesn't understand. About the promotion of my grandson Layfon's official rank. You shouldn't forget this, right? After this challenge is successfully completed, send a few missions immediately so that this kid Layfon can be promoted to a higher status. All in all, sending a few missions is just an excuse. An excuse to get Layfon promoted. Without this excuse, Sengoku would not be able to elevate Layfon's status for no reason. With the task as an excuse, everything will fall into place, and no one will be left biting their ears. I remembered. Sengoku looked depressed. He also thought that this matter was embarrassing. With the strength of Layfon's Commodore, how can he single out half of Marineford? But now, with these words brought by Kizaru, Sengoku completely changed his mind. Never thought. This brat, in just 3 days, actually raised the strength of Commodore to the level of Rear Admiral. Moreover, it is also the top leader in Rear Admiral. All this exceeded Sengoku's expectations. The essential. Layfon is only 7 years old. So many amazing feats have been accomplished, it's true that Sengoku's worldview is about to crumble. At the age of 7, his own strength has entered the level of Marine Rear Admiral's strength. What is this concept? Anyway, in the past hundreds of years, Sengoku has never seen such a horrible example. This is the first time I have seen it. Now you should know, why am I so confident in my grandson? Garp laughed. His mood became extraordinarily comfortable. This challenge suddenly seemed to him, there was no suspense. Layfon, sure to win. It seems that what Kizaru said just now didn't scare you. Sengoku rolled his eyes. Garp is an afterthought. After listening to Kizaru's words just now, he was obviously as dumb as himself. In a blink of an eye, Garp seems to have forgotten the color of surprise just now. Okay, I will arrange it when the time comes. Seeing Garp's expression, Sengoku looked unhappy. You two, don't go and see the incident in Marineford today. I remember, it's about to start. Kizaru took the initiative to intervene to remind at this time. Look, of course I have to. How could I miss the scene where my grandson Layfon made Kamui and killed everyone? Garp smiled confidently. Ever since, a group of 3 people left the Yuanli office. Even Sengoku, who has always been busy with affairs, temporarily squeezed out a little spare time, and accompanied Garp and Kizaru to the number 7 training ground all the way. Sengoku also wanted to see what the genius monster that Garp had always talked about looked like. Speaking up, this is his first meeting with Layfon. Let me take a closer look. Does the 7-year-old monster have 3 heads? Or 6 arms? With strange thoughts, Sengoku left the marshal's office. At the same time, the huge Marineford has also set off huge waves today. The storm swept every corner of Marineford, and the streets and alleys were filled with many speeches and heated discussions about this challenge. Hundreds of thousands of formal Marines gathered at the number 7 training ground, their eyes full of anticipation. The big challenge that has been waiting for 3 days is finally here. Early in the morning. Advertisement. The entire Marineford has already heard bursts of noise and excitement. Even some of the elite Marines who trained early in the morning on weekdays were rarely given a day off to watch this grand challenge. It can be imagined from this. How many eyes have been drawn to this challenge? Not only the hundreds of thousands of formal Marines have attracted attention, but some veteran vice admirals have been waiting here for a long time, looking forward to the start of this challenge. Around the number 7 training ground, a large number of Marine personnel gathered, and the originally spacious training ground was congested. Originally, number 7 training ground was the most spacious and spacious training ground in Naval Headquarters Marineford. But today, everyone is gathered together, which naturally makes this spacious training ground extraordinarily congested. Look around. Crowds of people, the densely packed Marines, like ants, swarmed in swarms, and only the black crowd could be seen. The number was too many to count. Even if he is the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, it is too arrogant to try to single out half of his Marineford. The key is that he is only 7 years old. How strong is a 7-year-old brat? Not to mention restricting Vice Admiral, even restricting Rear Admiral and Commodore. I think a colonel can easily teach him to be a man. That's right, a 7-year-old kid is still too arrogant after all. If you think you have some strength, you can be arrogant. All in one color. Everyone is not optimistic about Layfon. Age is here. How good is a 7-year-old child? To know. Today's challenge is half of Marineford. How many Marines are below Vice Admiral? How many Marines, Commodores, Rear Admirals? The strength of these Marines is of course very strong. How can a mere 7-year-old child be able to deal with it? While people are discussing, people who met Layfon came one after another. Including Kebi, Beru Meber, and Pokato, as well as the Marine members of Garp's warships, all arrived at the number 7 training ground one after another. They were a little worried about this grand challenge. Vice Admiral Garp, so reckless. Although Mr. Layfon is strong, he can only deal with Commodore-level powerhouses. But Vice Admiral Garp does not limit the challenge of Rear Admiral powerhouses. Doesn't this mean that Mr. Layfon will fail miserably? Kirby has been struggling with this problem. Layfon is really strong. This point, they are all clear. Pokato, who was instantly killed by Layfon, also clearly understood that Layfon's strength is very strong. But based on what he knew about Layfon at the time, the strength of Layfon is only in the strength class of Commodore. Now let Layfon face the challenge of Marine Rear Admiral all at once. How slim is the odds? It's just too low. What the hell is Vice Admiral Garp thinking? Pokato was worried. He worried that Layfon would fail, which would affect Garp's reputation. Hero Garp. This is a living sign in Marine. But if it is affected by this, in Pokato's view, it is not worth it. This challenge has attracted too many people's attention. Even Hina, who was instantly killed by Layfon that day, has arrived at the scene. The only difference from that day is that all the scars on Hina's face have been restored, and the original beautiful and moving face has been restored again. Many vice admirals, such as Flying Squirrel, Ghost Spider, Huo Shaoshan and other veteran vice admirals, have come to a remote area, watching the number 7 training ground very leisurely. And the Admiral of Headquarters. Aokiji, here we come. However, Difficult did not choose to show up. He was really worried that those people's fishing boats would be involved in his head again. With this in mind, Aokiji hides on the top of a certain building, holding binoculars in both hands, watching the number 7 training ground from a distance, instead of rushing to the training ground. In this way, you can ensure that you will not be noticed. Unfortunately, just when Aokiji thought, no one would notice. Advertisement. A golden halo suddenly appeared beside Aokiji out of thin air. Kindness. Aokiji frowned, his face changed a little. The golden halo finally became a silhouette. It's the yellow ape. Why are you here? Aokiji looked puzzled. Anyway, Layfon, this brat, is my disciple who taught swordsmanship for a few days. Let me see what's wrong with my disciple. Is there something wrong? Kizaru held his head high, Tien proudly. Is it not a disciple after teaching swordsmanship for a few days? Even if he teaches for a day, then this kid Layfon is still his disciple. That's right. With this thought in mind, Kizaru felt more comfortable. Aokiji was speechless for a moment. Then, Sengoku and Garp arrived one after another. A group of bigwigs gathered together, located at the top of the building, thousands of meters away, watching what happened on the other side of the training ground. Vice Admiral Garp, not going to host? Aokiji couldn't help but ask. This matter was convened by Garp, and the latter should be responsible for the follow-up development. I have already arranged it. Naturally, someone will help me do these things. Garp waved his hand. Of course he doesn't need to show up in person. When he took a closer look at the environment around the training ground, Garp called out to him on the spot, "What a guy. Everyone is running." Among the familiar faces inside, Garp saw more than one or two. Almost all of the vice admirals came to the scene. Even old comrades in arms Crane and Garp vaguely caught each other's figure. This is really a grand event. Garp sighed inwardly. Layfon imp, this is your chance to make a name for yourself. If you don't grasp it well, you will really regret it for the rest of your life. If you miss this opportunity, it will never happen again in the future. Wang Lahao, whether you can seize this opportunity to let everyone in Marineford clearly remember your famous reputation is up to you. Destiny is in your hands. Whether you can successfully grasp it depends on your own creation. Anyway, the old man has already done what he can do. The rest can only be left to you to control. Hero Garp. Feeling the noisy atmosphere around him, Layfon's expression was not affected, let alone the slightest ups and downs of anxiety and tension, but appeared very calm and composed. The sun shines on the garden. The black crowd is like densely packed ants. Layfon, who is only 7 years old, has no prestige and identity, so even if he loses, there is no such thing as ruin. It makes the atmosphere here extraordinarily noisy. Just look at today's move. This prestige will be seriously affected. In contrast, if Layfon really loses, the more influential victim will be Garp, who is Layfon's grandfather. Success or failure. Under all this attention. Can't hold back. At a glance, Layfon, wearing a Marine ensign uniform, slowly entered the arena with a samurai sword in his hand. Of course, here in the training ground, hundreds of thousands of formal Marines gathered. As a result, it will naturally be ruined. Whether it can be successfully remembered by the hundreds of thousands of official Marines in Marineford depends on whether today's challenge can successfully suppress all the challenges. Advertisement Chapter 176 is the beginning the end. Enter the Commodore. Open black lens bracket 6/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Training ground number 7. Crowds of people. The dark crowd surrounded in all directions, and the originally spacious training ground was surrounded by water, making it extremely congested. Hundreds of thousands of official Marines surrounded this place like a dense hive. In the crowd, most of them are unfamiliar faces. As Layfon stepped into it, everyone's eyes couldn't help but gather on him. Thousands, or even hundreds of thousands, of eyes, full of curiosity, suspicion, questioning and many other emotions, stared at Layfon's figure unabashedly. For most people, seeing Layfon for the first time. So, most people are shocked when they see Layfon in such a young figure. Although they knew for a long time that Garp's grandson Layfon was only 7 years old, when they actually saw it, their hearts were still tugged. Too young. It's this brat who doesn't even have full hair, dare to single out half of Marineford. This is too insane. Do you really think our Marineford is weak? What a joke. Hey, is it true or not? Is it really a 7-year-old kid? Just a 7-year-old kid who's half of us in Marineford today. Grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. Bursts of doubtful voices sounded from the crowd. Everyone's eyes were full of suspicion. Just this 7-year-old kid who caused the huge disturbance in Marineford. Is it worth it? Suddenly, they feel, things get a little dull. This kid seems weak, but can he really meet their challenge? There are no less than 100,000 people gathered here. And it is not generally the top powerhouse that is several times that of Commodore and Rear Admiral. Emotion. In the end, it was this little brat who challenged them. This kid, can you do it? What he has to face is the challenge of most of us in Marineford. To be honest, I don't know if he can do it. However, at the age of 7, he dared to set foot here without trembling with fear. This courage surprised me. That's right. Unfortunately, if you want to single out half of Marineford, you can't do it with enough guts with 17B. This requires great strength as capital. But kid, how strong is it? He is only 7 years old, how strong can he be? There was a lot of talk. Many people admire Layfon's courage to single-handedly bring this place. But there are still many people, their hearts are full of regret. Courage cannot be used as the capital to single out half of Marineford. Only strength is the most important thing. People can't imagine. How strong can a 7-year-old kid be? Can it really single out Marineford? Non-existent. All of them don't think Layfon can really complete today's challenge. The difficulty factor is really too high. Do not. It should be said that it is basically the possibility of the day. Infinitely close to zero possibility. You let a 7-year-old kid single out half a Marineford. What are you daydreaming about? Let's not talk about Rear Admiral and Commodore, even majors and lieutenant colonels are enough to easily crush this hairless brat. Although he is the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, even so, he will never be an exception. You can see if the person who hit him really wants to deal with him. If he really wants to deal with him, then it will definitely not be a problem if he is killed in a second. I think so too. Heroes see the same thing. After seeing Layfon, most people have a worse opinion of Layfon's strength. Really only 7 years old. And it looks like there is nothing outstanding and different from the outside. Ordinary, unremarkable, nor did it bring any different senses to everyone present. Pressure. Of course there is nothing. On the contrary, most people looked at this challenge and began to have a joking and playful mood. They were deeply curious and looking forward to it. Advertisement. Until they really saw Layfon, and they were suddenly disappointed. Just such a 7-year-old kid, how capable can he be? Emotion. They were looking forward to the 3-day challenge, it was this kind of challenge without any suspense. This extinguished a lot of enthusiasm in their hearts. Originally, some people still have one, and Layfon, who is only 7 years old, may have something different, which made Vice Admiral Garp dare to hold this challenge. But look at it this way today. But they couldn't see any difference between this 7-year-old and other 7-year-olds. On the contrary, the whole body reveals a ordinary. Ordinary. At first I thought it would be so exciting, but feelings are just a little kid's game. This game is bound to end soon. It's been brewing for 3 days, and the feelings are waiting for this. Vice Admiral Garp, what the hell are you thinking? Just this 7-year-old kid, is he really suitable for Marine Ensign? I always feel too weird. Seeing Layfon wearing the Marine Ensign uniform, many people couldn't help murmuring, expressing their inner dissatisfaction. 7-year-old Marine Ensign. Anyway, it's the first time they've met. Mr. Layfon, you are here. When he saw Layfon appearing, Kebby became more nervous and worried. Their confidence in Layfon has also been seriously shaken. Since Mr. Layfon dared to appear, does this mean that Mr. Layfon is still somewhat sure about this? Don't worry about Kirby, we have to choose to believe in Mr. Layfon and Vice Admiral Garp. Belumbo found a reason to comfort himself. It's not such a simple matter for this brat to win. Pocato didn't know when, but he had already appeared beside the two of them. His tone was full of deep sorrow and helplessness, and his eyes were absent-minded. Don't you think, Colonel Pocato, Mr. Layfon can win? Seeing Pocato, Kebby and the two became more and more worried. As Pocato, who has played against Layfon, he naturally has the right to speak 10 times. Since Pocato is not optimistic, it is obvious that Layfon's situation is quite serious. Or in other words, the distance from defeat is only a moment. Being able to kill me in seconds doesn't mean that he can kill Commodore in seconds, and it doesn't mean he can deal with Rear Admiral. Layfon is really strong, but he still has a long way to go from Rear Admiral. Commodore, it should be the limit of his strength. Want to deal with Rear Admiral? This possibility is very low, it can be said to be almost zero. Pocato sighed helplessly. How strong is Rear Admiral over Commodore? This point, Pocato naturally has a deep understanding. It is precisely because of this. He can make such a sure judgment. If they face Rear Admiral, Layfon will definitely lose. Pocato still knows Layfon's level of strength. Although it was seconded at the time, Pocato can still judge that Layfon's strength is at most limited to the strength level of Marine Commodore. From Rear Admiral, there is still a natural BB gap. And in just 3 days, how much can Layfon's strength improve? Even if there is an improvement, it is still impossible to cross from the Commodore to the Rear Admiral level, right? No matter how talented one is, it is absolutely impossible to achieve such an unimaginable feat. So, based on the above analysis, Pocato will make a positive judgment. In this challenge, Layfon's odds of winning are almost zero. That is, Mr. Layfon, is there basically no chance of winning? Kebby and Beru Meber felt heavy. Almost. Although Pocato didn't want to accept this matter, it was an indisputable fact. Commodore and Rear Admiral, although only one official rank difference. But in fact, strength, of course, is a world of difference. Not to mention, among the Marine Rear Admirals who came here, Pocato also saw many familiar faces. These are Marine Rear Admirals with old qualifications. Their strength, of course, is stronger than those who first entered the Marine Rear Admiral, and they belong to the top players in the Marine Rear Admiral. Seeing the appearance of these people made Pocato feel so heavy. Because he can be sure. Once these people make a move. Layfon, a must. There is no possibility of turning things around. If today's challenge, Layfon can win. Advertisement. Then Pocato could only think of one possibility. That is, the people of the Rear Admiral class watched indifferently, and had no plans to intervene. This is what Pocato can imagine. The only way Layfon can win. Other than that, there is no second possibility. The other side. Located in the center of the crowd. Hina naturally saw it too, this little man who killed herself instantly on the spot. The following Vice Admiral can be used. Not limited to Rear Admiral, can this brat handle it? Although he beat me at the time, his strength is at the Commodore level at most, right? Although the 7-year-old Marine Commodore is indeed shocking. But with Commodore's strength, if he wants to face the challenge of Rear Admiral, the odds of winning are really too low. Hina couldn't help tossing her hair. Her views and judgments are almost identical to those of Pocato. She also doesn't think Layfon can hold off the challenge from Rear Admiral. Miracles can happen. Killing her instantly does not mean that she can compete against Rear Admiral. At best, she is only the powerful class of the Colonel. Vice Admiral Garp, what are you thinking? Some Marine Vice Admirals with veteran qualifications still have this question in their hearts. They are also not optimistic about Layfon. 7-year-old Layfon, no matter how strong he is, he will never be able to compete with Marine Rear Admiral. This challenge is in their eyes. Layfon belongs to the party that must lose. The unsuspecting kind, located in the center of the training ground. There is a vacant area with a radius of more than 200 meters here. And at this moment, Layfon is located in the center, wearing a Marine ensign uniform, holding a samurai sword, and glanced at the crowd gathered around him expressionlessly, with a vaguely expectant smile on his face. This moment, he suddenly understood. Why is Garp planning this challenge so much? This seems to be the stage where I will fight to become famous. Old man, you really took great pains. Layfon couldn't help but feel emotional. In a noisy environment, all eyes focused on Layfon. No one dares to take the lead in launching a challenge. It made the situation seem to be frozen, making it even more weird. However, the situation will always face the situation of being broken. As predicted, about 2 minutes passed. A middle-aged man wearing a marine uniform walked out of the crowd slowly, carrying a saber at his waist, and seemed to be a swordsman. The frozen situation was directly broken. The first challenger finally appeared. Everyone stared at the features of the first challenger. Then, everyone noticed it in horror. The badge that hangs over the person's shoulder. Badge of the Commodore. This person turned out to be a naval headquarters general. My God, it's Commodore. The Commodore is in. The atmosphere was instantly detonated. Hundreds of thousands of formal Marines are staring at this middle-aged Marine Commodore who stepped into the training ground with wide eyes and shocked faces. They were stunned. In any case, they never dreamed of it. As soon as the challenge started, a king bomb came on the spot. As soon as the game started, Commodore couldn't help but want to make a move to quickly end the game. It's over, grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. Commodore did it himself. Does this mean the challenge has not begun, but it is already facing the end? Advertisement Chapter 177. There is basically no suspense about the outcome. Open black lens bracket 1/6 for customization. Close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Boiling. The atmosphere here was completely ignited. Hundreds of thousands of official Marines stared at the middle-aged man in the Commodore uniform step by step into the center of the training ground with shocking expressions. As soon as the challenge started, things seemed to be heating up. Everyone can't imagine. So soon, Commodore announces entry. This is the Naval Headquarters Commodore. The powerful elite Marine actually entered the arena from the very beginning. This is indeed something that most people do not expect at all. Let Tang Commodore, to deal with a 7-year-old child. Is there any suspense? Win or lose, do we still need to judge? This is Commodore, the elite powerhouse in Marine. The development of the matter exceeded the expectations of everyone present. They originally thought that there would be a Marine at the level of a major to test the strength of the 10-year-old grandson of Yinpu Vice Admiral. Can't predict after all. Just at the beginning, a strong Commodore announced his entry. This is really beyond everyone's budget. Is it over? But the challenge has just begun. Who can explain to me, who is this Commodore? Why did he suddenly enter the field? As a Commodore, shouldn't he just save it for the last time? He entered the field so directly, so can there be room for others to play? The challenge has not begun, it will end. Everyone had the same thought in their hearts. A pair of eyes fixed on the middle-aged Commodore carrying the badge on his shoulder. A Commodore title indeed, no doubt about it. King Fried. This is just the beginning, and there is a king bomb. Let a 7-year-old meet the Commodore challenge. Who can stand this? Although the opponent is the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, but he is only a 7-year-old boy, can he handle the challenge of Commodore? Of course it's impossible. Hardly anyone thought Layfon could hold up to the Commodore's challenge. It is precisely because of this. The mood of the many Marines present is so shocking. They waited and looked forward to the 3-day challenge, and it was about to end. Obviously it hasn't even started yet. Emotion. They waited for these 3 days in vain. Who would have thought that Commodore would enter the arena directly, without giving anyone a chance at all? It's not. Speaking of which, this Commodore is too bullying. The dignified Naval Headquarters Commodore actually wants to challenge a 7-year-old child. Although, this is the challenge rule set by Vice Admiral Garp. But Commodore took the challenge directly, isn't it too sudden? Even Commodore chose to shoot directly. Will there be suspense in this challenge? Of course the Commodore must win. Against a mere 7-year-old kid, is it possible that the Commodore will lose? What a joke. If the Commodore was really that weak, it wouldn't be called the Naval Headquarters Commodore. Every Commodore has gone through countless trials of life and death, and has reached a certain level of strength in order to obtain the status of today's Commodore. Don't think Commodore can really get promoted so easily. The difficulty factor is very high. As far as the current situation is concerned, the number of Commodores in the entire Marineford will not exceed 1,000 Commodores in total. To know how many official Marines are there in Marine? The official Marine here in Marineford alone costs hundreds of thousands. The total number of Commodores will not exceed 1,000. From here we can see how high the difficulty factor of Commodore is. If it is really easy to become a Commodore, the number of Commodores in Marineford may be more than 1,000. Commodore not only represents identity and status, but also represents absolute strength. Advertisement. If there is no absolute strength as a prerequisite factor, it will be more difficult to become a Commodore. Nowadays, when seeing Commodore enter in person, people began to look at Layfon with pity. This poor baby. That's horrible. From the start, face the challenge of the Marine Commodore. How difficult is it to beat the Commodore? None of them thought that a 7-year-old could really compete with Commodore. Is it possible? The land of possibilities. Rao's status as Garp's grandson can't change the concept they hold in their hearts. What about Garp's grandson? 7 is 7. Age is here. Just ask, how strong can a 7-year-old kid be? Against the Commodore. This is a joke. 99% of the official Marines are already waiting to see the scene of Feng being hanged and beaten by this Commodore. It's really boring. The Commodore made a move. Are young people so impatient these days? I still want to watch a few more challenges. Who knew that the king would bomb at the beginning? Commodore entered the arena directly, which is simply breaking the balance. That's not true. This person is too anxious. Anyway, we have waited for a few days, so we should let us have an eye addiction. Let us also see how strong the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp is. Pity. We can't see it. The Commodore makes a direct move. This is bound to be an instant kill situation. The grandson of Vice Admiral Garp may indeed have good strength, but facing Commodore, he must not be able to use all his strength, and he will face the fate of being instant killed. Hundreds of thousands of Marines are praying for Layfon. Do lose too badly. Anyway, you are also the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, who made this challenge, held by Vice Admiral Garp himself. And it is not limited to the powerhouses of Commodore and Rear Admiral. Now, the Commodore has really entered the game, and who can blame it? Vice Admiral Garp made its own rules, and no one else took the initiative to break them. It's over. The challenge that is about to end before it starts is really boring. These 3 days, I waited in vain. After waiting for 3 days, show me this. A group of Marines lost interest. They waited for 3 full days, but in the end they did not expect that the situation would develop like this. A Commodore is coming in strong. It depends on the result. The Commodore must win. Still need to think. Without thinking, they can come to such a conclusion. 7-year-old and Naval Headquarters Commodore. Of the two, who is stronger? Anyone who has a little self-judgment will basically think that the former is stronger. Who the hell is this Commodore? Is he in such a hurry? Does he want to end this challenge? Some began to wonder about the identity of the Commodore who entered. At the same time, Kebi, Belumbo and others also raised their mood. Enter the Commodore. This is no joke. In terms of strength, this Commodore is obviously stronger than the Marine Colonel Pocato next to them. Layfon, can you really deal with a powerhouse of this level? They don't know about it. Colonel Pocato, do you think Mr. Layfon can win? Kirby couldn't help asking. Advertisement. There is still a chance, as long as it is not Rear Admiral. With the strength of Layfon, the kid, the chance of defeating the challenger on the opposite side is not low. It's just that I didn't expect that Commodore directly launched a challenge at the beginning. This guy looks familiar. Pocato frowned, staring at the face of the middle-aged Commodore. I thought about it for about half a minute. Asking for flowers. Pocato's eyes were fixed, and his tone became a little heavy. I remembered. This guy, who seems to be called Kalexi, is a very powerful Marine Commodore. His qualifications are quite old. I remember when I was a lieutenant colonel, Corsi was already a Naval Headquarters Commodore. He stayed in this class of Commodore for at least 6 years or so. All in all, his strength is much stronger than ordinary Commodore. It can be said that the outstanding person in the Commodore does not belong to the level that just entered the Commodore. In this challenge, the outcome is really hard to tell. At first, Pocato also believes that Layfon has a relatively high chance of winning. But when he recognized the challenger's identity, Pocato's belief was somewhat shaken. An experienced Marine Commodore, and a new Marine Commodore. The power gap between the two is too great. And now, what Layfon needs to face is an experienced Naval Headquarters Commodore. Undeniable, Layfon is strong, but even so, Polkadot still couldn't judge. Now facing an experienced Marine Commodore, Layfon can compete and defeat him. Then Mr. Layfon, isn't there something wrong? Kirby couldn't help asking. There is a high probability of losing. If the challenger is just a newcomer to Marine Commodore, Layfon's chances of winning are quite impressive. But the problem is that the challenger on the other side is a Marine Commodore with old qualifications. With Layfon's strength, it's really hard to judge, what are his chances of winning? Pocato was depressed. He had an ominous premonition. If possible, he would naturally want to see Fu Feng win. But in all fairness, comparing the two, he is more inclined, and Corsi's chances of winning will be higher. Only, Pocato is not easy to say these words. Otherwise, it would be a blow to their fields too much. Some things are hard to say directly. Pocato could only hold it in his stomach without saying a word. Kebi and Belumbo beside them also seemed to see the seriousness of Pocato's face, and their moods became tense and uneasy involuntarily. They looked worried, watching the young figure in the battlefield. Mr. Layfon, come on, you can definitely win. This moment, I seem to have seen the scene where this brat was instantly killed and defeated. When they knew the specific identity of the Commodore who stepped into the training ground, and the hundreds of thousands of official Marines present, they had a more accurate and certain judgment on the outcome of this challenge in their hearts. It's the Corsi Commodore. Pocato felt a little helpless. This brat, it must be too unlucky. I have to say, this time, Vice Admiral Garp's grandson is in trouble. Winning or losing, there is basically no suspense. Kirby clenched his fists and cheered Layfon up in his heart. The first challenger is a Commodore who is as strong as a monster. And he is also a veteran who has entered the Commodore power class for 6 years. At the beginning of the game, I bumped into such an experienced Commodore. Even if you look at the Marine Commodore, the strength of the Corsi Commodore can be said to be the best. Hanging, the hundreds of thousands of Marines around also learned the identity of this Commodore challenger. At the same time, I remember that Corsi Commodore has entered the powerful class of Marine Commodore for a full 6 years. His strength, without a doubt, is as strong as a monster. He really didn't know what to say at this moment. It turned out to be this guy, he would be so impatient. Advertisement Chapter 178. In order to show respect, I decided to go all out. Open black lens bracket 2/6 for customization. Close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Corsi. Standing around the training ground, Hina frowned. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on the back of the middle-aged man in the Commodore uniform coat. Her pretty face showed a dignified look. Not good. Vice Admiral Garp's grandson Layfon, this kid is going to be planted. As soon as the show started, the Commodore entered the scene. This is indeed a change that Hina did not expect. Totally unexpected. I thought that the majestic Commodore should save face, so that Marines of the Major and Lieutenant Colonel levels can really enter the arena to challenge, and eventually lose to the opponent. Only those who are strong at the Commodore level will choose to enter the challenge. But the development of the matter was beyond Hina's expectation after all. Never thought about it. Commodore enters directly, no scruples. He didn't give the rest of the Marine any chance at all, and simply entered the arena and launched a solemn challenge to that 7-year-old kid. Thus, fighting, there is still suspense. Basically no. Not even Garp's grandson could change the outcome of this challenge. Not to mention, the strength of the Corps C Commodore is among the best in the Commodore class. After staying in the Commodore class for 6 years, his strength is certainly among the best in the Commodore class. If it's just a newcomer to Commodore, Layfon, a kid, still has a chance of winning. But at this moment, he is facing an experienced Commodore leader. In this battle, his odds of winning are too low. Hina felt like 3-0-0, this analysis. Based on many factors at the scene, she calmly and fairly analyzed the pros and cons of the two. First, Layfon's age. This is the most important factor for everyone to express distrust of Layfon's strength. Too young. Layfon is only 7 years old. No matter how talented he is, how strong can he be? Hina played against Layfon, and was killed by Layfon. But even so, Hina still doesn't think that Layfon can compete with Corps C in front of him. Corps C became famous very early. He is 37 years old this year. He is in the prime of his life. His strength and other aspects are in his heyday. On the other hand, Layfon on the opposite side is just in the stage of development. The age and status of the two are compared. The advantage Corps C has is too great. Certainly, even regardless of the interference of age, Corps C's strength should not be underestimated. He has been famous for a long time, and he has established a certain prestige in Marine Commodore. This brat, the situation is not good. Hina took a deep breath and thought to herself. Layfon's strength is indeed very strong, she can't deny that. But the helpless thing is, Corps C Commodore on the opposite side is much stronger. Naval Headquarters has no less than 1,000 Commodore. However, the strength of the Corps C Commodore can be regarded as the top 30 in the Commodore. This strength can be said to belong to the top class in Commodore. This brat, how do you deal with this level of isolation? Hina frowned. Anyway, she is not optimistic about Layfon. The disadvantage of Layfon is too obvious in this battle. Basically everyone can see the gap in pros and cons between Layfon and Corps C. Anyone with discerning eyes doesn't think Layfon can defeat Corps C. On the contrary, I think that there are more people who can kill Layfon in seconds by Corps C. Of the hundreds of thousands of formal Marines present, there were no less than 100,000 Marines, who believed that Layfon would definitely be defeated in the hands of Corps C and be killed in seconds. Being killed in seconds, it's impossible. But want to win. Disaster. It's as difficult as climbing the sky. Hina bit her pink lips lightly, staring intently at the movement on the training ground. With Layfon's strength, she doesn't think Layfon will be killed instantly. Advertisement. Anyway, the strength of Layfon's Commodore is certain. Otherwise, she wouldn't be instantly killed by Layfon. But, there is still a huge gap between Commodore and Commodore. And obviously, in her eyes, Layfon and Corps C are both in the Commodore strength class, but the strength gap between them will still be very huge. In this battle, Hina is more optimistic about Corps C. This Commodore with veteran qualifications belongs to the top class of Commodore. How could he not be able to beat a 7-year-old kid who just has Commodore's strength? There are not a few people who hold the same opinion as Hina. Some of the veteran senior vice admirals who were close to the training ground did not hide their identities, and looked at the training ground with strange eyes. Grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. Can you stop the Commodore? And it's a Marine Commodore with years of rich combat thinking and experience. Hang. I'm afraid it's choking enough. Even the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp is unlikely to be able to block the challenge of this guy Corps C. Speaking of which, Corps C, is he really not afraid of Vice Admiral Garp's anger? At the beginning, he directly entered the arena and launched a challenge without even giving any face. This is the intention to end the challenge that has been brewing for 3 days as quickly as possible. You know, this challenge was initiated by Vice Admiral Garp. He is really not afraid to anger Vice Admiral Garp by doing this. This guy is really daring. A group of Vice Admiral with veteran qualifications started an exchange. Just like Commodore and Commodore, there is a huge gap. There is also a huge gap between Vice Admiral and Vice Admiral. The most obvious example of comparison is Vice Admiral versus Garp. Levels are completely different. Although Garp is said to be Vice Admiral, his strength and status have already surpassed Vice Admiral by countless levels. Facing Garp, the hearts of most Vice Admirals present will still be full of admiration and fear. But even so, they still don't think Layfon, the grandson of Garp, can stand up to a challenge from a seasoned Commodore at the age of 7. Possibility is negligible. It can almost be said that it is close to zero. Here we go. Hundreds of thousands of formal Marines are keeping an eye on the training ground. Visible to the naked eye, Marine Commodore Corps C, who was wearing a coat of justice, had slowly taken out the saber at his waist, holding the sharp saber tightly in his right hand, exuding a sharp and oppressive aura from all over his body. The momentum is like a rainbow. The majestic momentum spread out from Corps C's body. A terrifying sense of oppression swept across the training ground in all directions. Some of the Marines closest to the periphery of the training ground could feel the oppressive feeling covering their bodies. Okay, what a horrible smell. The strength of the Corps C Commodore is so strong. With this strength, wouldn't he be able to instantly kill the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp on the opposite side at any time? A 7-year-old child, how can he block such a terrifying strength? After feeling the oppression of this momentum, more Marines became more convinced of their inner judgment. How can Tien Sui Boy block this force? Corps C's strength is stronger than imagined. Some Vice Admirals with veteran qualifications make judgments in their hearts. There is basically no suspense in this challenge. Corps C will definitely blow up Layfon opposite the hammer. These days, Corps C's strength has improved considerably. The level of strength he possesses now is actually very close to the level of Rear Admiral's strength. The 3-day challenge was brewing, and I never thought it would come to an end so soon. However, who would have thought that the dignified Commodore would enter the arena in such a hurry, wanting to end this farce as quickly as possible? Corps C, whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral, is going all out. This challenge will end on the spot at a speed that no one can imagine. Some people with eyesight can naturally judge. Corps C's strength is not limited to Commodore. Over the years, Corps C has accumulated in the Commodore class for too long, and naturally has the strength to fully impact the level of the Rear Admiral class. Only, Corps C still lacked some chances, so he stayed in Commodore and did not hit Rear Admiral. In this way, advertisement. Naturally, there is no need to say more about the outcome of the battle. This is a Marine Commodore whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral. Compared to a 7-year-old, which of the two is stronger? Is this something to think about? Not at all. Anyone with a little independent thinking seems to have seen the final result. At the same time, in the battlefield, Karasi's eyes flickered with a cold light, and he held a samurai sword. The sharp blade combined with the majestic momentum released by him made his eyes extraordinarily sharp. The sun is shining, reflecting his figure, making his figure appear more burly. Full of pressure, the samurai sword in his hand flickered coldly. The temperature of the surrounding air seems to have dropped a lot. Get icy, dense. The coldness grew and wrapped around his body. I came here to end this ridiculous farce as quickly as possible. Even if you are the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, I will never show mercy. So, don't blame me for being too cruel, I can only say that this farce should never have existed. Kei held a saber in his hand, and stared at the young figure in front of him with sharp eyes. He has a serious face, is very serious, meticulous, and has no slack or carelessness at all. Facing such a serious Marine Commodore, Layfon certainly would not deliberately belittle the other party, on the contrary, he respects such a conscientious Marine. There are very few Marines who are so conscientious. So, to show my respect for you, I decided. Go all out. Layfon also drew out his saber, narrowing his eyes slightly. With the blade in hand, Layfon exudes an aura, as if he has completely controlled the momentum of this battle. Everything is under control with confidence. This can be seen from the expression on Layfon's face. At the same time, sharp, the monstrous edge, released from Layfon's body. The sense of terror and oppression belonging to the swordsman, accompanied by this edge, B8 swept in all directions. Majestic, surging, like waves of turbulent ocean currents, with Layfon as the center point, they hit further areas. Kindness. And Kei was the first person to be swept over his body by this terrifying aura. He immediately shrank his pupils and looked surprised. Obviously, he was taken aback by Layfon's momentum. Of course he didn't expect that. Such a terrifying aura would actually make him feel it from a 7-year-old kid. So, are you ready? The blade in Layfon's hand was already aimed at Karasi. Absurd. This is so absurd. When facing a 7-year-old kid. In the bottom of my heart, there is a wave of unconfident emotions. Karasi was in a terrified mood. Of course he didn't dare to imagine that when facing a mere 7-year-old kid, the pressure deep in his heart would suddenly increase without warning. The development and trend of things gradually began to get out of his controllable range. His throat was dry, and he gritted his teeth to forcefully suppress the many negative emotions in his heart. War. Boom. Karasi put aside all the thoughts in his mind, stared at Layfon with firm eyes, kicked his feet, and the floor tiles were trampled, broken and cracked on the spot. At the same time, let his body rush forward, rushing towards Layfon with a terrifying speed. The battle has officially begun since the announcement. Advertisement Chapter 179 The Commodore is up. FK it, the Commodore is second. Open black lens bracket 3/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. The battle has begun. The audience cheers. Hundreds of thousands of formal Marines stared at the trend of the battlefield with wide-eyed eyes, without blinking, and focused on observing the movements of the two people on the training ground. Vice Admiral, who is not familiar with some veteran qualifications, was shocked by the news in the training ground. In particular, although the aura felt from Layfon exploded very quickly, they, who had 5 keen senses, could feel it very clearly. This momentum and sharpness, it seems to be something serious. This is a review from Vice Admiral, a flying squirrel. As a veteran Vice Admiral, the strength of the flying squirrel is naturally very strong. Aside from those monsters such as Garp, the strength of the Vice Admiral flying squirrel can also be said to be among the best in Vice Admiral. On the same level as the flying squirrel, there are ghost spiders, Huo Shaoshan and so on. This batch of Vice Admiral belongs to the group with the highest strength. This moment, the flying squirrel felt a rare pressure from Layfon. Yes, as for Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral, he felt the pressure from Layfon. This made the flying squirrel look a little suspicious. What's going on? Not quite right. This is completely different from the trend and development they expected. This sharpness and aura are obviously not weaker than that of Rear Admiral, it can already be said to be the majestic coercion of Rear Admiral. The weird thing is that they actually felt the aura and coercion of the Rear Admiral level from a 7-year-old child. How can that be? The brain circuit of the flying squirrel was confused on the spot. This brat, not quite right. After the rest of the Vice Admirals reacted, 14 thought so in their hearts. There was a huge change in their expressions. A pair of pupils were staring at the battlefield, and their gazes were fixed on the young figure holding a samurai sword. Compared to Corsi, is the person they want to pay more attention to now is Lay. Suddenly, a cloud of white mist seemed to emerge from Layfon's body, covering Layfon's figure. Let Flying Squirrel and his group of veteran Vice Admiral gradually become completely unable to see through Layfon. An illusion, the ghost spider thought strangely in his heart. But the oppressive momentum just now, how could it be an illusion? But to make him believe and accept it, this terrifying aura that is not weaker than the Rear Admiral level is released from a 7-year-old child. After all, this is still too subverting the ghost spider's cognition. Make him unbelievable. It's not an illusion. The words from his colleague Huo Shaoshan Vice Admiral stunned Ghost Spider on the spot. What the hell? Did this aura really come from that 7-year-old kid? This is not scientific. The imposing aura emanating from this brat's body just now really belongs to the aura of Rear Admiral's powerful class. It's even more majestic than Kerosi's aura, and it's almost dozens of times more powerful. Huo Shaoshan couldn't calm down either. The development of things exceeded their original expectations. They thought so. This challenge, which has been brewing for 3 days, will be terminated as quickly as possible with the entry of a Commodore, and finally the curtain will be pulled down. But after all, surprisingly, it still happened. The biggest surprise was that they ignored that 7-year-old kid. They seriously ignored the strength of that 7-year-old kid. No way. Doesn't this mean? The ghost spider opened its mouth, with a shocked expression on its face. His words came to an abrupt end and he couldn't continue. The key words are really subversive and shocking. So that, as Vice Admiral's ghost spider, he has experienced countless major events, and his mood can't help but be stirred up by huge waves one after another, which can't be calmed down. It's incredible. All the current happenings have overturned the ghost spider's previous cognition. Not to mention ghost spiders, flying squirrels are also in a mess of thinking. Advertisement. A group of senior vice admirals who have noticed the same situation, only feel that their cognitive outlook is suffering the fate of continuous collapse. Rear Admiral's momentum. This brat, his strength has reached the Rear Admiral level. It's impossible. How old is he? This kid who was 7 years old started practicing in the womb, so there is no reason to be so exaggerated. This is outrageous. A group of vice admirals couldn't help venting the shocking emotional waves in their hearts. It's just momentum. Maybe it's a bluff. This kid may not really have the strength of Rear Admiral. Well said. It's just momentum. It doesn't mean anything. It depends on how the kid on the opposite side will resolve the attack that Keiichi is brewing. In this way, we can see the depth of this kid's strength. Then, a group of vice admirals suppressed the shock in their hearts, and all of them fixed the shocking eyes on the battlefield, the young figure holding a samurai sword and looking calm. Even in the face of Corsi's strong attack and kill. But Layfon is still very calm, as if everything is under control. This kind of self-confidence is fully revealed on the immature face. Immediately, Keiichi on the opposite side, for some reason, felt more and more pressure in his heart. This brat, Corsi has his eyes on Layfon, who has launched an offensive. The arrow is on the string, and it has to be fired. Corsi was holding a samurai sword in his hand, the light of the sword flickered, and his figure was already beside Layfon. This momentum, it's dozens of times more powerful than mine, maybe more than that. The level is not at the same level at all. Corsi was in a terrified mood. Is this an illusion? Or, this brat is bluffing? Dozens of times more majestic than myself, what does this mean? What is this concept? I am located in Commodore, infinitely close to the power class of Rear Admiral. And the aura that is dozens of times bigger than himself, doesn't this explain? The opponent's strength has already surpassed his own. Power class in Rear Admiral. Do not. This is impossible. Immediately, Corsi denied the horrifying thought in his heart. There is no way he will accept it. A 7-year-old kid unexpectedly reached this level of experience. This is completely inconsistent with scientific common sense. Something must be wrong. That's right. It must be so. Don't care what kind of bluff it is, if it's just a bluff, it will be smashed with the knife in my hand. All the complex thoughts, all turned into one thought. This idea has been implemented in Corsi's heart. A mere 7-year-old kid, how can he be capable, how can his strength reach the realm of Rear Admiral? There must be factors that I have overlooked. With such a concept in mind, Corsi seemed to regain his confidence, his eyes glistened with brilliance, his face was full of fighting spirit, and he tightly grasped the samurai sword in his hand and slashed at Chong's body. But I don't know why. Seeing the confident smile on Layfon's face, Corsi's eyelids twitched wildly, and he felt bad. An ominous premonition fills my heart. And the source of this ominous premonition? From the Layfon in front of you. The closer you get, the stronger this ominous premonition will be. And let Keiichi's confidence in his heart is undergoing a very frightening wear and tear. At the same time, Layfon raised his head, his eyes were very accurate, and he saw Karasi in front of him, and a smile appeared on his face involuntarily. Karasi, on the other hand, also noticed Layfon's gaze. Then, eyes on each other. This moment, advertisement. Keiichi only felt that the hairs all over his body stood on end. It was like staring at a ferocious beast. The sense of crisis that hit his face swept across his body, causing goosebumps to rise all over his body, and the panic in his heart magnified infinitely beyond restraint. What happened? This brat, something is really wrong. Just one look can bring this sense of crisis to yourself. The biting cold air rose from the soles of Keiichi's feet to the sky, making his scalp numb. The surging sense of oppression that hit his face squeezed Keiichi's body and mind in an all-round way. Standing beside Layfon, the blade in Karasi's hand never dropped. Because his body movements have become extraordinarily stiff and slow. It was as if a 100,000-ton boulder suddenly fell on his shoulders, severely restricting his current ability to move. How could I feel such a strong sense of crisis from a 7-year-old kid? Karasi was sweating violently on his back. He has not felt such a strong sense of crisis for a long time. And at this moment, what he can't imagine in his dreams is. He unexpectedly, from a 7-year-old child, once again felt the oppression that he had never experienced in these years, as well as the threatening aura that pierced his heart. This kind of taste has been missing for a long time. The victory or defeat of a battle often happens in one breath. Just like now, in the fight between Karasi and Layfon, the outcome is only a matter of thought. Now, Keiichi's movements seemed extremely slow. His every move is completely seen by Layfon into the pupil, and it can be seen very clearly that any movement of Karasi, as if it has been slowed down hundreds of times, is presented in Layfon's mind. Full of loopholes, Layfon made such an evaluation of Karasi's offense. What Karasi launched was a very clumsy attack. Without the slightest hesitation, Layfon lifted the katana in his hand, the blade shone with a cold light, and a gloomy but icy fierce momentum swept across Karasi's body in an instant. Keiichi's pupils shrank, he only felt that his blade had not been cut before. The knife flashes. Layfon's knife is hundreds of times faster than Karasi's. Quick, simply indescribably fast. Karasi could only catch a ray of light that flickered away, and the blade magnified infinitely from his pupils, getting closer and closer. The sense of crisis that came with it made Keiichi smell it for a long time. Breath of death. I felt the breath of death from a 7-year-old kid. Is this a dream? I haven't woken up yet. In the past, this was unimaginable even in Karasi's dreams. But at this time, all this happened before his eyes. Let him experience it for himself. The powerlessness, despair, and fear of being completely dominated by a 7-year-old kid. This wave, it's cold. Karasi looked hopeless. Layfon's knife arrived in front of him. Moment, sharp blade, turned into. The back of the knife mercilessly hit Keiichi's body. Boom. With a bang, the huge force transmitted from the back of the blade hit Keiichi's waist. Click. Several ribs of Karasi were shattered abruptly by the majestic force brought by the back of the knife. The majestic and violent power is transmitted from the waist to the whole body. The tingling sensation made Keiichi unable to bear a muffled groan, his face became pale and bloodless at a speed visible to the naked eye, and at the same time, he vomited blood. Even his internal organs were shaken violently by the violent force, the internal organs in his body churned, and blood spewed out from his throat crazily. His entire body was knocked hundreds of meters away by a terrifying force. Like a kite with a broken string, it flew upside down in the air, spitting blood all the way. Rumble. Finally, Karasi's body fell to the ground, rubbed against the ground and rolled over a dozen times before he was able to calm down a little. After rubbing for dozens of meters all the way, blood stained the ground along the way, making it look extraordinarily ferocious. What's more, the sand and stones on the ground made Karasi rubbed with blood all over his body, and his clothes became torn, and he was lying on the ground in a very embarrassing figure, looking like he was dying. Advertisement Chapter 180 Don't dare to accept the proxy orders under the age of 10. Open black lens bracket 4/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Victory or defeat is only in one thought. Often in an instant, it can determine the final outcome and success of a battle. Obviously, this moment, the victory or defeat appeared at this moment. Spike. In the whole process, there was no sloppiness, only crisp and rough movements and strength, which finally showed the crushing situation of being killed by a second. Dignified Marine Commodore, a top powerhouse who has stayed in the Commodore power class for 6 years, the strength is infinitely close to the elite Marine of Rear Admiral, Marine Commodore in his prime. But it was so weird that someone instantly killed him on the spot. This result, way goose elephant. No one can predict it. Therefore, hundreds of thousands of official Marines all fell into silence. Not a word. Let the atmosphere here look extraordinarily quiet. Dead silence. Silence. There is no sound. Breaking this moment only belongs to the silent atmosphere here. Karasi, a powerful Marine Commodore, looks at the thousands of Commodores in Marineford, and his strength can be ranked among the top 30 Commodores. However, just so without warning, it was caught in seconds. This is an excellent Marine Commodore with seasoned experience and rich combat thinking. But even so, Keiichi didn't have any power to parry, and was killed instantly by a child who was only 7 years old. There is no way to fight back. One-sided, showing the posture of being crushed. It's just a face-to-face meeting, and the outcome is already divided. Still got killed in seconds. This is the Naval Headquarters Commodore. The mighty Marine Commodore, as the mainstay of the Marine, will be crushed by someone. Does anyone in the Ministry of Education envision this point? Including a group of vice admirals with veteran qualifications, none of them could have imagined that the trend of this battle would develop in this way. A child as young as 7 years old. With one blow, he killed a Marine Commodore who was in his prime, and a Commodore whose strength was infinitely close to that of the Marine Rear Admiral class. It's incredible. The scene in front of me overturned the cognition of the people present. Pairs of eyes watching the trend of the battlefield are now wide and round, and the pupils are full of shock, panic, horror and many other emotions, which cannot be concealed. Eyes turn. People were stunned, looking at the young figure standing in the center of the training ground with a samurai sword in hand. Turn. Someone else looked hundreds of meters away at the figure lying on the ground in an embarrassing and full body. The two form a sharp contrast. It caused an unparalleled visual impact to everyone present. All of this overturns cognition. The worldview seems to be shattered. The deadly atmosphere finally ushered in the moment to be broken. What did I see? This is the voice of almost everyone. They couldn't understand, and couldn't believe it, what was happening in front of them at this moment. Spike, or the majestic Marine Commodore, blamed by a 7-year-old. How are they going to believe that? This is completely against common sense. It's not scientific. A child who is only 7 years old, Marine Commodore Corsi in seconds. What an incredible thing is this? Anyway, among the hundreds of thousands of formal Marines present, none of them could break free from the shocking emotions. Those who are familiar with Layfon's strength, including Pokado, Kebi, and Belumbo, were all shocked by what they saw. Even if they knew that Layfon was very powerful, it would be unimaginable in their dreams that things would develop to this point. Marine Commodore Corsi was killed in seconds. What is this concept? Second kill. Is this a hallucination? Many people began to suspect that they were hallucinating. But when they rubbed their eyes and observed the trend of the battlefield again, they still can only see. Advertisement. Lying on the ground dying, Corsi was seriously injured. On the contrary, there is a neatly dressed young figure holding a samurai sword in the center of the training ground. These two have caused a very strong visual impact on them. Corey is so miserable, he was directly injured and dying. On the other hand, Layfon on the opposite side was spotless and unscathed. Who could have imagined such a battle situation? Not to mention people who have never known Layfon's strength, even the Pokado people who know Layfon's strength are deeply shocked by it. One can imagine. People who have never seen the strength of Layfon should witness the scene where a Marine Commodore whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral was instantly killed by a 7-year-old child. How much impact will this have on them? No, it's not a hallucination. Someone's lips trembled, and they spoke slowly. The deadly atmosphere was subsequently broken. Company, Corsi Commodore, stopped. Oh my god. How is this possible? Corsi Commodore, didn't he say that his strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral? How could he be killed in such a simple and quick way when he was in his prime? Incredible. Boiling. The audience is boiling. Hundreds of thousands of official Marines expressed their horror and shock. How to make them believe that? The fact that the dignified Marine Commodore was instantly killed by a 7-year-old child. Commodore. This is already a mainstay in Marine. Not to mention, Corsi is still a leader in the Commodore class, and his strength can be ranked among the top 30. But who can explain to them? It's such a strong Corsi Commodore, why was Mao suddenly killed by someone? Anyway, it happened quite suddenly. They haven't seen it clearly yet, they can only see the scene where Corsi was thrown hundreds of meters away with a single knife, lying on the ground, rolling and rubbing for more than 10 times before subsiding. It's too tragic. The menacing Kalexi was killed so thoroughly. There was not even an ounce of strength left to resist. What a shitty thing this is. At first, seeing Corsi's fierce offensive, they thought the battle would be over. Unexpectedly, the battle is really over. But it was not the result they imagined. Corsi, he was completely killed in seconds. After a face-to-face meeting, Corsi was instantly killed. The end of the battle was indeed as fast as people expected. But the difference is that it wasn't the 7-year-old Layfon who was instantly killed, but Corsi, whose strength was infinitely close to the Rear Admiral level. And this is the main reason why people feel so shaken. The one who was instantly killed turned out to be Keiichi. This naturally overturned their previous judgment. All judgments will be reduced to nothing and become a joke. What the hell is going on? As strong as the Corsi Commodore, how could it be second? This is unscientific. Didn't Corsi Commodore say that his strength is infinitely close to the Rear Admiral level? In the Commodore's strength class, how could he be killed in seconds when he ranks in the top 30? Am I dreaming? Corsi Commodore, an existence so powerful as him, has been instantly killed. Just ask. That kid on the other side, how strong is he? Unimaginable. It's horrible. How did things develop to this point? My world view has collapsed. No one could have imagined that things would develop to such an unbelievable level. A small number of people can accept it, and Corsi loses. But they couldn't accept it. Corsi was defeated by an instant kill with a crushing attitude. To be defeated, and to be killed in seconds. These two are two completely different concepts. If one wanted to instantly kill Corsi, one's strength must be several times higher than that of Corsi's, and only then would it be possible to achieve the world-shattering feat of instant killing Corsi. Doesn't that explain it? Advertisement. The 7-year-old kid who instantly killed Kei-Leishi is several times stronger than Kei-Leishi. Hundreds of thousands of people present were shocked by this terrifying thought. This brat, only 7 years old, at the age of 7, how many times stronger than Kei-Leishi? Is it possible? Where did this freak come from? Do you start practicing from the womb? But there is no reason to be so outrageously exaggerated. This kid is only 7 years old. Only then did people recall. The scariest thing about Karasi being killed in seconds was that Layfon, who killed Karasi in seconds, was only 7 years old. Kill Karasi at the age of 7. At the age of 7, he already possesses a level of strength several times higher than that of Karasi. What kind of monster is this? What kind of talent can make a person achieve this thrilling feat? Poor thinking ability limits the thinking of everyone present. The picture that they can never imagine is happening in front of their eyes at this moment, let them witness it with their own eyes. Hallucination. Hundreds of thousands saw hallucinations. Powerful. Too strong. A child who is only 7 years old actually wears such a terrifying level of strength. How the hell did he do it? Even if you have a terrifying talent, it's impossible to raise your strength to such a terrifying level at this age, right? Everyone's mood is still full of shock. Presumably. The scene that happened today is bound to make them unforgettable in this lifetime. The majestic Naval Headquarters Commodore, whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral, was killed by a 7-year-old child in one blow. This shocking event was deeply imprinted in their minds, making it impossible for them to calm down in a short time. At the same time, a more important question came up. Now that Karasi is infinitely close to the strength of Rear Admiral. So, the strength that can instantly kill Kei-Leishi completely surpasses Li Dezhao, Kei-Leishi's strength several times. What kind of strength class should he be in? Commodore. Do not. This is definitely beyond the scope of the Commodore. Above the Commodore, what level? E. Rear Admiral. Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral, second only to Vice Admiral. Less, Rear Admiral. A 7-year-old Rear Admiral level powerhouse. My god, I must be crazy. Everyone was dumbfounded. 7-year-old Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral. Obediently. Real or fake? In this sea, there really are such incomprehensible and terrifying monsters. At the age of 7, he has mastered the strength of Rear Admiral. This must be too outrageous. The scene in front of me immediately shook the perception of hundreds of thousands of formal Marines present. And let their worldview fully meet the fate of collapse. A worldview that has been constructed for decades and has been built with great difficulty. But with today, all kinds of things happen before their eyes, and they are facing gradual collapse and rupture. Starting today, I don't even dare to accept orders for substitutes under the age of 10. I can't afford to provoke you at all. It's really scary. Are these children, one by one, such monsters? This still makes people alive. 7-year-old Marine Rear Admiral's combat power. What is the concept of riding a horse? Even if you start practicing cultivation from the womb, there's no reason why it should be so scary. Advertisement Chapter 181 The youngest Marine Admiral template in history. Open black lens bracket 5/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. The atmosphere here is completely detonated. Boiling. Unparalleled boiling. Hundreds of thousands of formal Marines all stared blankly at the young figure in the center of the training ground with those shocking pupils. There is no longer any underestimation in the eyes, but the eyes are full of horror and shock, as well as a deep sense of awe. Strength is the foundation of everything. And obviously, Layfon has shown a strength that is valued and awe-inspiring. Kill Naval Headquarters Commodore Karasi instantly with one blow. Moreover, Karasi is also a Marine Commodore whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral, with seasoned experience and rich combat thinking. But none of these can be Karasi's trump card against Layfon. Inevitably, Karasi was second-guessed. Now, Karasi was still lying dying on the ground hundreds of meters away, seriously injured, rubbing his body and flying backwards for tens of meters. Traces of bloodline could be seen on the road. Embarrassed. How embarrassing. As Karasi of the Commodore, this was the most embarrassing battle of his life. The pungent smell of blood flowed from Kei-Leishi's body, and then quickly drifted into the air. Call. Kei-Leishi exhaled heavily, lying on the ground unable to move. Because he was shot too far, his body rolled over and rubbed against the ground more than a dozen times. The Commodore uniform that made him wear the Justice coat was already in tatters, the skin on the outside was chafed and cracked, and bloodline spilled out and infected his body. It made his figure look extraordinarily miserable. It's too tragic. This is undoubtedly the most tragic defeat that Karasi has experienced in recent years. Be killed in seconds. A merciless one-knife kill. This is something Karasi himself could never have dreamed of. He's a dignified Naval Headquarters Commodore. Me as a Commodore. Unexpectedly, someone will be instantly killed. I was still killed by a kid who was only 7 years old. Sure, isn't this really a dream? Karasi was lying heavily on the ground, his face was stained with bloodline, his pupils were bloodshot, and 500 was still full of horror. It all happened like a dream. The tingling pain in his body told him all the time. Everything that happened was real, not an illusion. As a Marine Commodore, his strength is infinitely close to that of a Rear Admiral, but he was really defeated by a 7-year-old child with a samurai sword in his hand. The kind that has no power to fight back. Karasi has not experienced it for a long time. Despair dominated by fear. But he never thought that he would feel this long-lost nightmare of being dominated from a 7-year-old child. Grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. This little brat is acting like a monster. Corsi was terrified. Whenever he thinks back to the scene of fighting Layfon just now, he shudders. That moment, the eye contact with Layfon is still vivid in Corsi's memory. As if being stared at by a ferocious beast, the body seemed to have fallen into a freezer, with goosebumps rising all over. I couldn't control the panic in my heart and many other emotions. It's unimaginable that a 7-year-old kid can be so powerful. This is simply subversive cognition. In this sea, there are monsters with such terrifying talents. I admit, I was careless. Corsi was indeed careless. In this battle, he didn't really go all out. However, this is not an excuse for him to be killed in seconds. Corsi does not think that this is a reason for him to be able to comfort himself. Because he imagined it a little bit. If at that time, he had really gone all out, would the result have been different? The conclusions he reached made Corsi feel deeply shocked and desperate. The result will not be different. He, too, will be instantly killed. Layfon's strength is too strong. It was so powerful that it gave Corsi an endless sense of oppression at that time, making the latter's body feel as if tens of thousands of tons of boulders were heavily suppressing his shoulders. Body movements became dull and slow. This is caused by the sense of oppression emanating from Layfon's body. Advertisement. Whether I'm careless or not, the result will not be any different from the present. I will still be instantly killed by this monster. Corsi's lips trembled, thinking with horror. Main idea. Negligence. These are not the reasons for him to be killed in seconds. He will not use these reasons as an excuse to comfort himself. Of course he does. He was instantly killed, not defeated. The two concepts are, of course, completely different. Obviously, Layfon's strength may surpass him several times. At that moment, the explosive strength of that brat gave me an illusion. That kind of strength, even in Rear Admiral, seems to belong to a very powerful top existence. Corsi was in a terrified mood. He didn't know whether this was an illusion or a real feeling. But no doubt, this illusion is enough to overturn Corsi's worldview. A 7-year-old child actually possesses such terrifying strength. What the hell is this for? Can't understand. This kind of thing completely shattered Corsi's previous cognition. Illusion or not, the only fact that Corsi can be 100% sure of is that Layfon, who can easily kill him in seconds, must be at the level of Rear Admiral. There is no doubt about this. Rear Admiral. This level of strength is a realm of strength that Corsi has been chasing after for 6 years, but has yet to step into it. Never thought about it. A 7-year-old child can easily stand on this level of strength. By contrast, Layfon suddenly felt that he was a worthless trash. I've worked hard all my life, but I can't chase what comes close. However, a 7-year-old kid can get it so easily. Really, there is a huge gap between people when they are born. Corsi, who had never believed in the theory of innateness, suddenly felt the deep malice brought to him by the theory of innateness. Effort. Is this possible with effort? Can you do it with hard work, and reach the strength level of Marine Rear Admiral at the age of 7? What a joke. There is only one explanation that can explain this situation. Talent. Unparalleled horror talent. Amazing talent. Only in this way can it be explained why a kid who is only 7 years old can make his own strength reach the Rear Admiral level at this age. Damn talent. I hate geniuses. Corsi sighed bitterly with a frustrated look on his face. After working hard for most of my life, it is not as good as others practicing for several years. This severely hit Corsi's will and fighting spirit. Seeing Layfon, Corsi's heart suffered a critical blow of 10,000 tons. Genius. Do not. This horse is a monster. That's when Corsi was lying on the ground badly wounded and seemingly dying. Surrounded by shocking remarks, they are still spreading in all directions. Except for hundreds of thousands of official Marines. Even the group of veteran Marine Vice Admirals were shocked, their faces were full of dullness and astonishment, and their eyes widened into donkey eyes. What's going on? What just happened? Really? The feeling at the beginning is not wrong at all. The majestic momentum belonging to the Rear Admiral level was released from this 7-year-old kid. It's not a bluff. Advertisement. This brat, he really has the strength level of Rear Admiral. Otherwise, how do you explain the fact that Layfon was instantly killed with a knife? Is it worth thinking about being able to kill Layfon in an instant? This is definitely a powerhouse at the Rear Admiral level. Flying squirrels, ghost spiders, and Huo Shaoshan were stunned. The moment Layfon shot, they really felt the terrifying aura erupting from Layfon. Let them judge then. This is the momentum of Rear Admiral. I thought that this might be a bluff, or other reasons. But never expected. Layfon, who is only 7 years old, really controls the strength level of Rear Admiral. This is no illusion. Can you believe it? A 7-year-old kid with the strength of Rear Admiral. Are the current Rear Admiral level powerhouses already rotten? Otherwise, why would a 7-year-old brat be so powerful? Even if he has been in contact with cultivation since the birth of his mother's womb, it has only been 7 years since he was fully trained. In 7 years, he can practice Rear Admiral. What are you talking about? How many hardships does it take to become a Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral? Of course, many Vice Admirals present are well aware of this. They also went all the way from Rear Admiral to the status of Vice Admiral, and they naturally knew how much suffering and life and death struggle were required to become Rear Admiral. 7 years. Don't say 7 years. 17 years may not be able to do it. But right now, what did they see? This 7-year-old kid really did it. Okay, this grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, is he probably possessed by a monster? It doesn't make sense to be so terrible. He reached the realm of Rear Admiral at the age of 7. If he is given a few more years, wouldn't even Admiral be unable to hold back? My god, this is unbelievable. 7-year-old Rear Admiral, what is this concept? A group of Vice Admirals were shocked. They thought of further afield. At the age of 7, his strength has reached Rear Admiral. In a few years, with this monster-like terrifying talent, wouldn't it be Vice Admiral? Plus #26. Is it far from Admiral? Near. Very close. Only one step away. But here comes the problem. How old is Layfon? Only 7 years old this year. It will take 10 years to figure it all out. Even if it takes 10 years, how old will Layfon be? 17. Doesn't this mean that 17-year-old Admiral of Headquarters? A group of Vice Admirals peeked at each other, and they could all see the shock in the depths of each other's pupils. Is it too exaggerated? For hundreds of years, there has never been a similar horror in Marine. Just don't know why. A group of Vice Admirals tried to get this absurd and terrifying thought out of their heads. The youngest Admiral of Headquarters ever. 17-year-old Admiral of Headquarters. But the strange thing is that this idea seems to be firmly rooted in their minds, and they can't erase it no matter what. Layfon, who is only 7 years old, is simply the youngest Admiral of Headquarters template in history. From Layfon's body, they were in a very absurd mood, and had this idea. Simply unprecedented. Admiral of Headquarters under the age of 30 is hard to find. We must be crazy. Crazy. This kid can really become Admiral. Not to mention the Admiral of Headquarters who is under the age of 20 and 17. In other words, maybe. And it's very likely that. Don't say 17. Advertisement chapter 182. What makes you have the illusion that I am weak? Open black lens bracket 6/6 for customization. Close black lens bracket. Advertisement. No doubt, the development and trend of this challenge exceeded the expectations of 10% of Marine present. I thought, this challenge, which has been brewing for 3 days, will be ended by a Commodore in the most boring manner and at the fastest speed. But after all, never expected. This Commodore was strangled by a 10-year-old kid across the street. It was exactly the same as the instant kill situation they expected. But the only difference is that the target who was killed in seconds was completely different from what they had imagined. They envisioned that the target of the spike was the 7-year-old Layfon. But in reality, the one who was instantly killed was the powerful Marine Commodore Corsi on the opposite side. The same as Spike, it's just that the person who was instantly killed was replaced by another one, that's all. It is precisely because of this that their emotional turmoil can be so violent. It was like a storm was coming, and the beating waves swept across their hearts. Waves of waves surged in their hearts, and they couldn't calm down. To end this challenge. Do not. This is just the beginning of the challenge. Finish. No. It is appropriate to mention the end now. Accidents always happen silently. With Layfon being killed in seconds, this challenge has officially entered a more intense stage. Corsi Commodore, it's all gone. Then who else can shake this 7-year-old monster? As strong as Corsi Commodore, who didn't even have the ability to resist, and was so easily killed in a crushing posture. It makes me wonder, who else can try to challenge this terrible monster? A Commodore whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral was given a second by a 7-year-old child. Next, what level of powerhouse needs to be admitted to shake this 7-year-old kid? Think about it. Hundreds of thousands of official Marines suddenly fell silent. Their hearts were still shaking, and they were deeply shocked by Layfon's strength. This shocking emotion must make them unable to cool down for a few days. A 7-year-old child, what is the picture of a spiked Commodore? Anyway, today, at the number 7 training ground, they witnessed it with their own eyes. Commodore was instantly killed by an immature kid. It seems that there is no way to fight back. All of this overturned everyone's perception of Commodore. Say something. Is the Commodore really that good? He was killed in seconds by a brat. Is this really the Naval Headquarters Commodore they imagined? This is too weak and too pitiful. It's not that the Corsi Commodore is too weak. It's the person he's facing. He's too strong. Although I can't believe it, the facts in front of me make me believe it. The 7-year-old kid who killed Corsi Commodore in seconds is Layfon, the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. He has the Battle of Rear Admiral. This fact was heard from the crowd. Once again, it became the source of the flame that ignited everyone's inner shock. The 7-year-old Rear Admiral's strength. What an incredible thing this is. If they hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, they certainly wouldn't dare to imagine such a scene. But all the things that happened in front of their eyes all revealed that the things they couldn't believe were real examples of what happened. Rear Admiral combat power. 7 years old, already possessing such a terrifying level of strength. What kind of monster is this stepping horse? Everyone looked horrified. Suddenly, I felt that Layfon was a little pitiful. Without any preparation, he was instantly killed by someone. The dignified Naval Headquarters Commodore, just like that. They could imagine how depressed Layfon was at the moment. Rear Admiral's combat power, this can explain why Corsi Commodore will be instantly killed. But, he's only 7 years old. Yes, he is only 7 years old. This is the most critical and most terrifying factor. Age. Advertisement. Layfon is too young. At such a young age, he already possessed the combat power of Rear Admiral. What does this do? No one can imagine what a terrifying talent this person must have in order to make his strength reach the Rear Admiral level at the age of 7. Many people began to think about it. What were they doing when they themselves were 7 years old? At that time, they were still wearing crotch pants, and they had to be watched even when they peed. By contrast, they looked again, Layfon, who had killed the Naval Headquarters Commodore Corsi. Sudden, a sense of self-ashamedness was born from their hearts. The strong contrast makes them feel inferior from the bottom of their hearts. I am trash. I'm an idiot. I was born purely to waste time in the world's rations. Similar emotions emerged and filled their hearts. 7. Rear Admiral. In a few years, will Vice Admiral be far behind? After getting Vice Admiral, will Admiral be far away? Thinking of this, hundreds of thousands of official Marines were even more shocked. It's as if they saw a template for the youngest Marine Admiral ever. This moment, each other, standing in front of them. No one has ever made them have the illusion that the other party must become Admiral. But, from Layfon, they had this feeling like never before. At the same time, the other side, Pokuto was dumbfounded. Amazing. When did this kid become so terrifying? The trend of things far exceeded his expectations. He has already made plans for Layfon's defeat. Can be unpredictable after all. The one who was instantly killed turned out to be Naval Headquarters Commodore Corsi. An experienced man who has stayed in the Commodore power class for 6 years, and is very rich in combat thinking and other aspects. However, it was such a strong man, but he was instantly killed by Layfon. Rear Admiral. This is the strength of Rear Admiral. Layfon, when did he reach the power level of Rear Admiral? It's not scientific. Pokato's worldview collapsed. He obviously knows Layfon better than many Marines who are in the dark. It is precisely because he understands more and more deeply than ordinary people that he can understand more shockingly how horrifying the world Layfon's behavior is. 3 days ago, it was only Commodore strength. 3 days later, Rear Admiral. What is this for? This is totally wrong. Okay. Only 3 days, what can you do? How short 3 days are. However, who can explain? Layfon, why did it take 3 days for the Commodore to reach the Rear Admiral level? Pokuto couldn't figure it out. Even if he thought about it, he couldn't think of a reason. For him, after 3 days, even urinating is hard work. But Layfon, using these 3 short days, has ushered in such a huge leap in his own strength. That's out of the ordinary, isn't it? There is no reason. Even if the talent is high, this is seriously contrary to common sense. And many more. It seems that I have been mistaken all along. I seem to be judging a monster with the eyes of a normal person. Asking for flowers. Monsters, how can we treat them with common sense? What the hell am I thinking about? Pokuto felt it. Colonel Pokuto, what the hell? Advertisement. Kebi and Beru Meber also cast bewildered looks. They also did not expect that the situation of this battle would change so quickly. Don't ask me, I don't know anything. Bokuto opened his mouth, his pupils were still absent-minded, and his face was dull and dull. Killed in seconds. A strong Commodore whose strength is infinitely close to that of Marine Rear Admiral, was surpassed by Mr. Layfon. My god. Beru Meber's lips trembled and he spoke incoherently. This immediately made Kebi and Belumbo feel more deeply. The gap between them and Rima. This is unreachable gap. Colonel Pokuto, didn't you say that Mr. Layfon is not enough for this challenge? Kirby continued to ask. He was so shocked. Following what Pokuto said earlier, his confidence in Layfon began to shake. Then, the wavering of confidence has only just begun. Layfon, it's a second for Corsi. Then, 0. The shaken confidence was then calmed down. A bigger wave of shock surged into Kebi's heart. It was Commodore who was killed in seconds, not some unknown people like cats and dogs. Also, this Commodore's strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral. But even so, he was still missed. It's not that this Commodore is too weak, but that the monster opposite is too strong. I remember 3 days ago. Mr. Layfon, the strength is not so terrifying, is it? Kirby thought. At that time, Layfon was really strong, but it was definitely far from reaching the level of terror it is now. So, that is to say, in these 3 days, Layfon's strength ushered in an earth-shaking change. Only this possibility can explain the current scene. 3 days. Going from Commodore to Rear Admiral in just 3 days. Kebi's heart was full of shock. I still underestimated this kid's monster-like talent. Pokuto's tone was full of horror and emotion. At the same time, Hina was also confused. Her pretty face was full of dull and frightened colors. What the hell? What happened? A moment. Is the victory over? Corsi Commodore just got killed without warning. Don't even have the ability to resist. This brat. Looking hundreds of meters away, the dying figure lying on the ground. Layfon slowly retracted the samurai sword in his hand, the sharp blade reflected the sunlight from the sky, and the halo flickered, very dazzling. In fact, I do not know. What is the reason that gave you the illusion that I am actually weak? His strength is at the Rear Admiral level. Hina's forehead was buzzing, her eyes were absent-minded, and her heart suffered an unprecedented heavy blow. J. Located in the center of the training ground. Emotion. Feeling the surroundings, hundreds of thousands of pairs of shocking eyes are gathering on him at this moment. Is this true? Only 7 years old. I was seriously mistaken. This is not some Commodore power, this horse is a Rear Admiral powerhouse. Only then did Hina wake up. This brat is old. Layfon couldn't help shaking his head, feeling it. A monster who has reached the Rear Admiral level at only 7 years old. Advertisement Chapter 183 Look. I told you it was a trap. Open black lens bracket 1/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. This moment. All attention. The eyes of hundreds of thousands of official Marines gathered on Layfon, who was carrying a samurai sword. Their expressions were full of shock, and the shocking mood still cannot be calmed down to this day. Countless eyes gathered together. Layfon, holding a katana, is in the center of the training ground. Although young, this young figure endowed hundreds of thousands of Marines with an endless sense of oppression. Layfon subverts everyone's perception of age. Turn out to be. Strength and age do not have a fixed value. Even if you are young, you can still be very strong. Not everyone will be limited in strength because of their youth. Just like Layfon in front of you. Just 7 years old, enough to kill a naval headquarters commodore easily. The scene of Karasi being instantly killed was deeply imprinted in their minds, making it impossible for them to ease the shocking emotional waves in their hearts for a short time. What a surprise. No one expected this battle. The dignified Marine Commodore Corsi announced that he was defeated by a flash kill as soon as he entered the arena. The one who killed him instantly was a child who was only 7 years old. It is also the core root of this challenge. Too strong. A child who was only 7 years old, unexpectedly beat Layfon Vice Admiral on the spot. Grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, so scary. As expected, the blood of a hero flows through his body. At only 7 years old, his strength has reached the 187 level of the Rear Admiral level. It is far above the Commodore. If I hadn't witnessed it with my own eyes, I would never believe it in my life. Point. In this battle, this kid named Layfon has also officially proved his strength, enough to be qualified for the identity of Naval Headquarters Ensign. Rear Admiral's strength, as an ensign, isn't it too much? This moment, almost no one has chosen to question the official status of Layfon Ensign. There is no other reason. Strength. The terrifying strength displayed by Layfon has deeply impressed all the Marines present, and they were so convinced that they did not dare to have any objections. One face-to-face, instantly killed a Naval Headquarters Commodore. With this strength, what happened to being a mere Marine ensign? What's wrong? Of course not. To be able to kill Commodore in seconds is still a Commodore whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral. It can be seen that the strength of Layfon must have surpassed that of Commodore and is located in the class of Rear Admiral. What's the problem with a strong person whose strength is in the Rear Admiral class, serving as the Naval Headquarters Ensign? Nothing wrong. There is absolutely no reason to refute or question it. Come down in these 3 days. The most questioned about Layfon's ensign status is that people don't trust Layfon's strength and can be qualified for the status of ensign. But when Layfon showed the corresponding strength, and even surpassed the strength of ensign by several grades, those who questioned and refuted were speechless. For someone as strong as Rear Admiral, wouldn't it be normal to be an ensign? Plus, Layfon's identity background. As the grandson of a Marine hero, and possessing the identity of Rear Admiral, it is not very reasonable to be given the identity of a Marine ensign just after joining Marine. Who can refute? Who dares to refute? A strong man with Rear Admiral's strength, there is nothing wrong with being a Marine ensign. Who dares to object? Not to mention, the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. Whoever dares to oppose, I will go over with a slap. Isn't it normal for a powerhouse of this level, such a terrifying genius monster, to be a Marine ensign? I really don't know what those who question think. That's right, from the very beginning, I fully believed in the resolution of Vice Admiral Garp and Marshal Sengoku, and never questioned it. It's okay, I thought so too. Hundreds of thousands of formal Marines present looked at Layfon with eyes full of doubt and dissatisfaction, but their eyes were filled with deep admiration and admiration. This sea always values strength. Only strong strength is the foundation of everything. Just like now, if it weren't for Layfon possessing the terrifying strength of the Rear Admiral level, the identity of ensign might not be stable at all. Advertisement. Even as Garp's grandson, this status does not allow Layfon to secure ensign status. Only with outstanding strength can he truly gain a firm foothold. And Layfon's instant kill on Corsi Commodore is to truly show his own strength, which makes everyone deeply admire and convincing. A pair of eyes full of shock and amazement looked at the young figure of Layfon. They dare not imagine. Layfon, who is only 7 years old, has already stood at this height. No doubt, there are hundreds of thousands of formal Marines, but there are only a handful of those whose real strength can reach Rear Admiral. It can almost be said that 99% of the Marines present are under the Rear Admiral. That is to say, Layfon, who is only 7 years old, is strong enough to add to Marine who is 99% of the field. Our whole life has been lived on dogs. No, don't lower the bar for dogs. What do you mean? It's not interesting. I mainly want to say that you are not as good as dogs. Quote question mark question mark question mark. Something is wrong with you. A group of Marines could not help but bow their heads in shame, their expressions full of shame. With their 3-legged cat skills, they dared to question the existence of this kind of horror before. This is a powerhouse of the Rear Admiral level. The 7-year-old ensign they questioned before was actually a monster with Rear Admiral combat power. Whenever thinking of this, many people feel a little rejoicing. Fine, I am not the first to initiate a challenge. Otherwise, the consequences would be very dire. Terra. Many looked pitifully at the dying figure lying on the ground hundreds of meters away, with expressions full of joy and pity. What will be the consequences of provoking this 7-year-old child? See it, this half-dead lying on the ground as the consequence. Is it bad enough? Those who were beaten were almost powerless to fight back. Once the knife comes down, you will be dying, half dead. That's it, Marine Commodore. The strength is infinitely close to Rear Admiral. I heard that the strength is still in the top 30 in Commodore. So, what is the use of these? Useless. It doesn't make any sense. Those who should be killed in seconds will be killed in seconds. Even if it is as strong as Commodore, it is still inevitable to be killed in seconds. Certainly, Corsi's feat can be regarded as a pathfinding for the hundreds of thousands of official Marines present. Let everyone deeply understand how powerful and terrifying the 7-year-old child they neglected is. So far so good. If it wasn't for Corsi Commodore, I really thought that the 7-year-old ensign was very powerful. No, the moment Corsi Commodore was instantly killed, I was frightened into a cold sweat. Because, just now, I was planning to launch a challenge. I have to say that Corsi Commodore became my benefactor. Let me avoid the tragic fate of being killed by this 7-year-old child. The tragedy of the Corsi Commodore made me retreat from the difficulties. It also made me realize how terrifyingly strong this 7-year-old kid is. My benefactor, Corsi Commodore, is my benefactor today. That's right, it makes sense. Poor Corsi Commodore, a dignified Commodore powerhouse, is lying on the ground dying at the same time, and at the same time, hundreds of thousands of official Marines are talking about it. That's horrible. They have already lost so embarrassingly. But it still became the object of ridicule by everyone present. Have no choice. As the saying goes, shoot the bird that stands out. And Corsi, since he was the first to enter the arena, he must be prepared to be defeated. Although, most of the people present never thought that Corsi would be defeated or even instantly killed. But the facts are in front of them, and they have to accept all this. Corsi, it can be said that he laid down his guns for everyone. Of course, he also wrote about himself being too anxious. But no one can deny it. Advertisement. If it weren't for Corsi, the hundreds of thousands of official Marines present would not have understood that Layfon is so powerful and terrifying. With a lesson learned from the past, it happened to give them a warning. Let them stop one after another, and completely suppress the thoughts of trying to challenge Layfon. Challenge. What a joke. Even Corsi was caught in seconds. They risk their lives to challenge. Don't they die? Stronger than Layfon, even a face-to-face can't stop it. They are a group of weak chickens, what can they use to challenge this monster? Can you stop it? Can't stop it at all. Levels are completely different. The gap is too big. Layfon, this is a Rear Admiral powerhouse. Although, only 7 years old, but Rear Admiral's strength is beyond doubt. This point can be seen from the fact that Corsi was killed in seconds. Previously, many people are eager to move, trying to challenge Layfon. But as Layfon was instantly killed, the minds of these people who were ready to move were completely suppressed, making them so terrified that they never dared to show their heads at will. The Commodore has been beaten, they took the hammer to challenge. The other side, the top of a tall building. Big guys gather. Garp, Sengoku, Kizaru, Aokiji. The 4 leaders of Naval Headquarters gathered here. Of course they saw the scene where Layfon killed Corsi in a flash. To this, whether it's Garp, or Sengoku, or Kizaru, the 3 of them have long been mentally prepared. Kizaru, as the swordsmanship instructor who trained with Layfon for 3 days, naturally had expected Layfon's strength improvement. Both Garp and Sengoku were informed by Kizaru. Although they were a little surprised when they saw Corsi being instantly killed, they couldn't accept it. After all, they had already made similar psychological preparations before. But only Aokiji was unprepared. He really is, the strength he showed to Layfon. 3 days. This brat really took advantage of 3 days. He raised his own strength from Marine Commodore to Marine Rear Admiral. 3.9 inches it's easy to do, and in one shot, the strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral's Layfon. This brat's strength is not Rear Admiral, what else can it be? I haven't seen you for 3 days, why is this kid so powerful? In 3 days, from Weizhong to Shaoluo. Is it possible? This is so unscientific. Seriously against common sense. Aokiji was a little dazed and horrified. Such a shocking example of the world. Good guy. Aokiji looked at Garp's back with palpitations and fear, and then looked at the young figure in the center of the training ground thousands of meters away, and seemed to understand something in his heart. I have a little bit of my heart guarding against this. I have already said, really, it's only been 3 days, but hundreds of thousands of official Marines have already been recruited. Look and see. The speed of this strength increase is simply a monster. The brat. This in itself is a huge trap. Even the well-informed Aokiji saw it for the first time in his life. This grandpa and grandson are too insidious. This trap is simply impossible to guard against. Fine. Sure enough, it cannot be regarded as common sense. I'm riding a horse and calling it a good guy. You stupid fellows, you have no idea that you have already fallen into the trap. After calming down for a moment, Aokiji's thoughts turned wildly. Advertisement chapter 184 However, Aokiji, have already seen through everything. Open black lens bracket 2/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. If there is no adequate preparation, the grandfather and grandson 2 meetings will be held with such great fanfare, an extremely grand challenge to the hundreds of thousands of official Marines in the entire Marineford. Non-existent. Based on Aokiji's understanding of Garp and Layfon, he can make a very certain judgment in his heart. If they hadn't made sufficient preparations, it was absolutely impossible for the grandpa and grandson to stir up such a huge disturbance in Marineford. Obviously, this must have been prepared, and this turmoil will be turned into such a violent situation. Thinking about it, all of this must be under the control of the grandfather and grandson. Thinking of this, Aokiji shuddered a little. He had goosebumps all over his body, looking at Garp standing beside him with a smile on his face. His heart suddenly felt weak, and his back was sweating violently. The culprit of the huge storm that swept through Marineford was standing by his side. Panic, panic. This grandpa and grandson are really not a good thing. Everyone is a master of routines. Comparing myself with the two of them, it is simply a world. The level difference is too far. Cowardly, cowardly. The grandpa and grandson, anyway, I can't afford to provoke them. But, I can afford to hide. Aokiji showed a happy expression. Fine, I already had the foresight. This grandpa and grandson will launch this challenge for no reason. Of course not. Based on what Aokiji, know about the characters of the two of them, these two are masters of routines. Play with them. That must be unplayable. I didn't see that the hundreds of thousands of official Marines in the entire Marineford were easily manipulated by this grandpa and grandson. I'm just Aokiji, 14 Hidehi Nang, how can I be compared with this vile guy? Aokiji, feel ashamed. These guys, fearing being sold, are still working hard to count the money for this grandpa and grandson. Aokiji looked at the hundreds of thousands of official Marines, and couldn't help thinking. Although the development and trend of this challenge did shock Aokiji, it did not exceed his expectations. He had already prepared a little bit of mental preparedness to withstand the impact of the grandson and grandson's trap. As predicted, everything seems to have verified what Aokiji thought in his heart. This grandpa and grandson really set off hundreds of thousands of Marines in the entire Marine. The key is, and it worked, hundreds of thousands of official Marines have entered the trap at this moment, but they are still in a state of ignorance. This moment, Aokiji suddenly had a feeling in his heart. The feeling that everyone is drunk and I am awake alone. Huge Marineford. But Aokiji, can't find a confidant. It's sad, sad. Aokiji shook his head and sighed. But it's inevitable. With my Aokiji's ingenuity, it's normal that others can't keep up with my thinking. Anyway, this Marineford, I can't count on these idiots. Being easily toyed with by this grandpa and grandson. What a sad people. Pity. Old man. Aokiji looked at Garp's back, full of emotion in his heart. You can't predict it all the time, but Aokiji, have already seen through your conspiracy. Do you really think you can hold the entire Marineford in your palm? What a joke. All your conspiracies and tricks, in front of my Aokiji's eyes, everything will be invisible. Advertisement. Aokiji, with many thoughts in his mind, suppressed the emotional waves in his heart, and looked at the training ground 1,000 meters away with his eyes full of sighs. This 7-year-old kid is such a freak. Without making a sound, the strength has crossed to the realm of Rear Admiral. To this, Aokiji had a lot of mental preparations, and was shocked severely. Obviously 3 days ago, this brat was still in the powerful class of Commodore. But 3 days later, who can imagine? This brat has actually reached the combat power of Rear Admiral. What kind of concept is this? What kind of talent can make this kid's strength so terrifying? This is simply unbelievable, spanning from Commodore to Rear Admiral in 3 days. How does this make those who have worked hard for several years, or even more than 10 years, not necessarily be able to make the leap from Commodore to Rear Admiral? By contrast, these Commodores in Marineford are nothing but idiots. According to the growth rate of this kid's terrifying strength. In a few more years, I'm afraid it will be infinitely close to the sky. Aokiji was startled, a little horrified. Not to mention, this possibility is still quite high. If everything goes smoothly, with the terrifying talent possessed by this kid, it is not impossible to let his strength infinitely approach Admiral. On the contrary, the possibility is very high. A template for future admirals. Looking at Layfon's young figure, Aokiji had a similar thought in his heart, that is, the youngest Admiral of Headquarters in history. Obediently, real or fake, is the lineage of the Monkey family really so terrifying? All of them are out-and-out monsters. The kid Layfon is the scariest one. At the same time, training course. Layfon, holding a samurai sword, slowly looked away. His expression was calm and composed, and he did not have the slightest pressure, anxiety and other emotions brought about by hundreds of thousands of pairs of shocking eyes. Instead, he is particularly calm, far beyond the calm appearance of his age. If it wasn't for fear of arousing the anger of everyone present, Layfon really wanted to shout to everyone. Marine Commodore. That's it. Weak and pathetic. Layfon wanted to go all out to deal with this Naval Headquarters Commodore. But after all, he didn't expect that after a face-to-face meeting, this so-called Commodore, whose strength was infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral, was easily killed by himself in a flash. But the critical moment. Otherwise, at that moment, Layfon would not only have severely injured Corsi Commodore, but killed the latter on the spot, obliterating the latter's life in an instant. In the end, Layfon chose to keep it. In a place like Marineford, it would be inappropriate to kill someone. Also, we are all Marine colleagues, there is no need to fight and shout. Where he can be merciful, Layfon certainly won't mind taking the other party's life. Then next, who else? The Commodore is up. Is there a Rear Admiral next? That's really exciting. I also really want to feel the strength level of Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral level powerhouses. It's also just for me to weigh. With my current strength level, how far can I go? Use the Rear Admirals as a benchmark to measure my level of strength. It allows me to judge more accurately what level my strength has reached. Layfon narrowed his eyes slightly, looked around with a smile on his face. Many Marines who were glanced at by him lowered their heads in shame and low self-esteem, and did not dare to look at him at all, looking very embarrassed. The atmosphere here, at the beginning of writing, has been completely different. Before learning about the terrifying strength of Layfon, hundreds of thousands of official Marines all wished to be the first to bear the brunt and take the lead in launching the challenge. However, advertisement. When Corsi Commodore was instantly killed by Layfon on the spot, and showed a crushing instant kill with no power to fight back. The people present no longer dared to act rashly, and could only look at Layfon's figure with eyes full of awe. For a while, no one stepped out of the crowd to challenge. And let this situation seem to be somewhat deadlocked. Nobody challenged. Layfon looked slightly surprised. Anyway, hundreds of thousands of official Marines gathered here. Unexpectedly, at this moment, no one dares to challenge himself. To know, among the crowd, Layfon saw many familiar faces. It is not common for some veteran Vice Admiral powerhouses to gather around the periphery of the crowd. Naturally, there must be quite a few strong Rear Admirals gathered. But they didn't dare to challenge at all. This made Layfon really surprised and disappointed. Without a benchmark to measure his own strength, this makes him very uncomfortable. Say, you are not so cowardly, are you? I just killed a Commodore in seconds, why are you so frightened? Did I play too aggressively at the beginning? Discourage them from wanting to challenge. Make them retreat. With weird eyes, Layfon glanced at the many Marines around him. Crowds of people, the densely packed Marine, group after group, surrounded this place like a large group of ants, so dark that it is impossible to see the end at a glance. No one dares to underestimate Layfon anymore. The lessons learned from the past are placed on the ground hundreds of meters away. Corsi was lying on the ground dying. This is the most typical example. 920 was killed in seconds. One face-to-face will be hit hard. The dignified Marine Commodore was all second-guessed. This seriously dispelled 99% of Marines' thoughts that were still on the verge of moving before. The strength is infinitely close to the Commodore's Rear Admiral, and it is second. Their strength rushes up, so how is that different from giving away the head? Those who are now eligible to challenge. Only Rear Admiral. Only those at the Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral level are qualified to challenge Layfon. Under the Rear Admiral, rushing up is just a matter of death and instant kill. On this point, everyone said Yi Ming. It is also because everyone is very aware of their own strength, so they dare not act rashly. Finally, under everyone's waiting, about half a minute passed. The stalemate ushered in a broken situation. Rear Admiral. A middle-aged man with a saber, about 40 years old, slowly walked out of the crowd at this time, completely breaking the silent atmosphere, and became the second challenger. The first challenger is Commodore, whose strength is infinitely close to Rear Admiral's Naval Headquarters Commodore. With the second Rear Admiral level challengers stepping up. Everyone can clearly see that this person is wearing a Justice coat and the badge on his shoulders, indicating his status all the time. After Kalexi was killed in seconds. It's the Rear Admiral rank. All around, hundreds of thousands of official Marines gathered with excited eyes, and they froze on this person. And the second challenger is directly a strong person at the Rear Admiral level. He gradually walked into the open training hall in front of him. His steps were steady, his facial features were sharp and angular, his face was serious and meticulous, and he looked extraordinarily stable. I see. The deadlocked situation was finally broken. At the same time, naturally, this challenge added fuel to the flames, and the evolution became more and more intense, and the lively atmosphere became more surging and turbulent. Everyone was excited. Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral level powerhouse finally got the first one to stand up and try to challenge Layfon. This is a Rear Admiral powerhouse. The second challenger was successfully born and released. Advertisement Chapter 185 Kizaru. These two are completely different levels. Open black lens bracket 3/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. Boiling. The atmosphere at the scene once again fueled the flames and became more and more exciting. Hundreds of thousands of Marines, with faces full of excitement and anticipation, watched the figure of Marine Rear Admiral walking out of the crowd, their expressions full of excitement. It's a Rear Admiral level powerhouse. There's nothing wrong with that. Looking at the military rank on his shoulders, everything shows that this person is Rear Admiral. The strong Rear Admiral has finally stood up. Rear Admiral, but a terrifying underdog who is close to Vice Admiral level. Marine Rear Admiral is undoubtedly the top elite in Marine. The strongest under Vice Admiral. Every Marine Rear Admiral has basically mastered two-color hockey. Only mastering the two-color hockey is the only basic threshold to measure whether a Rear Admiral is strong. Of course, there are not many people who have not comprehended the two-color hockey, but have the combat power of the Rear Admiral, but most of them are capable people, relying on the ability of Devil Fruit, kinding to be promoted to Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral. Also, there are also some rear admirals of the giant race who do not control the two-color haki, but with their excellent physique and strength and other overall combat power, they are comparable to the general rear admirals who have mastered the two-color haki. Of course, but these examples are still very few. Most of the Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral, most of them have mastered the two-color haki initially. Even if you encounter a person with Logia ability, you can use it to fight. As for Marine 6 styles, for every Marine Rear Admiral, the degree of control over Marine 6 styles is naturally very refined. Marine 6 styles, this is the basic combat method that the Colonel and Commodore must master. Naturally, as Rear Admirals, most of them are very proficient in Marine 6 styles as Grandmasters. But at this moment, a Rear Admiral level powerhouse took the initiative to stand up and challenge, which naturally filled the mood of everyone present with anticipation. Before Garp launched this challenge, it limited the power of Vice Admiral to participate in the challenge, but it did not limit Rear Admiral. That is, Rear Admiral, that is, among those who can challenge, the strongest group. So, this challenge means, challenge the ultimate outcome. Whether Rear Admiral can successfully defeat Layfon is crucial. This 7-year-old kid, can you block it? This is the powerhouse of Rear Admiral. Really, an existence whose strength has reached the level of Rear Admiral, not the existence of Corps C Commodore, whose strength is infinitely close to that of Rear Admiral. The strength is infinitely close to the Rear Admiral, and there must be a very big gap between the real Rear Admiral and the real Rear Admiral. The real Rear Admiral is stronger than the Corps C Commodore. Up, quote, grandson of Vice Admiral Garp, can you win this time? Hanging, very hanging. Rear Admiral has made a move, the grandson of Vice Admiral, even if he can instantly kill Corps C Commodore, I am afraid, it will be difficult to parry the attack from Rear Admiral. There was a lot of talk. All kinds of speeches emerge and endlessly and wander around. Everyone is talking about it. The Rear Admiral level challenger, can Layfon, who is only 7 years old, cope with it? Disaster. It's as difficult as climbing the sky. Rear Admiral and Commodore are completely different in strength, and the grade gap is too big. A kid who is only 7 years old wants to shake Rear Admiral. The basic possibility is not high. Even if this brat really kills Corps C Commodore in an instant, he will definitely feel weak in the face of Rear Admiral. It depends on how long this brat can last under the hands of Rear Admiral. As for defeating Rear Admiral, unless a miracle happens. 90% of the people did not say they were optimistic about Layfon, but they were more optimistic about the opposite Rear Admiral. There are also a few people who hold a different point of view. This kind of people are people who know Layfon, such as Pokato, Kebi, and Belumbo. Come on, Rear Admiral made a move. Kebi looked a little pale and worried. Colonel Pokato, Mr. Layfon, can you withstand the pressure of Rear Admiral? Belumbo couldn't help asking. That's enough. Pokato took a deep breath and stared at the figure of Rear Admiral stepping into the training ground with a solemn expression, his brows were tightly knit and he was deep in thought. This Rear Admiral also feels familiar to him. As Colonel Marine, who has been in Naval Headquarters for many years, Pokato naturally knows many familiar faces, including Commodore, Rear Admiral, and even Vice Admiral level powerhouses. The powerhouses of Rear Admiral are the only ones who come and go in Marineford. It's normal for Pokato to know. Advertisement. Colonel Pokato, don't you think Mr. Layfon too? Kobe opened his mouth, his throat was dry. It's not a matter of looking good or not, but of this kid's strength, which I can't fathom right now. Although the Rear Admiral on the opposite side seems to have a higher winning surface, who knows if what this brat just displayed is all the strength he controls. Pokato spoke very calmly. Based on his understanding of Layfon's character, this little brat is not worth his life. Did you really go all out just now? Not necessarily. In this way, Pokato is also hard to imagine, who will win between the two. It's just a powerhouse at the Rear Admiral level, which impressed Pokato very deeply, making him think subconsciously. It is very difficult for Layfon to defeat Rear Admiral. But it's not impossible. All in all, everything depends on the children of the next two. Premature speculation and judgment now, I am afraid that I will be slapped in the face later. How dare I jump to conclusions in front of a face-slapping madman? This time Pokato learned well. There are also lessons learned from the past, which are in front of us. Just like the scene where Corps C Commodore was instantly killed by Layfon still seemed to form an invisible slap, hitting Pokato's face with dull pain. When Corps C entered the field, Pokato thought that Layfon was going to be cold. Unexpectedly, Karasi turned his head and was instantly caught. This made Pokato feel ashamed. The slap was too loud. Not only Pokato, among the hundreds of thousands of Marines present, no one could escape Layfon's loud slap, which made their heads buzzing. This brat cannot be treated with common sense. I still don't want to jump to conclusions. What if I get slapped in the face again next time, where will my colonel's face go? Not to mention, as the number of times I've been slapped in the face by this brat still low. Pokato suppressed many thoughts in his mind, and stared at the training ground directly in front of him. Pokato, who has been slapped in the face by Layfon countless times, did not dare to make any comments this time, and quietly watched the trend and development of the battlefield. Don't you want to lose face as a colonel? Having been slapped in the face many times, Pokato was almost numb. This time, he no longer makes his own judgments. Although, he felt in his heart that this time Layfon might really be hanging. But he doesn't say it. In this way, who knows what we think in our hearts? Even if the inner judgment is subverted again, who knows? Really, Silence is gold. You shouldn't overtalk yourself. The title of Layfon, the face-slapping monster, is it called for nothing? Do not know why. Hokuto always feels that the development of things may run counter to the direction he thinks. Whenever there is anything involved with Layfon, Hokuto's ability to judge will suffer an unprecedented impact and be forcibly reversed. Anyway, what happened to this kid cannot be considered and judged with the thinking of a normal person. If you look at what happened to this kid with the brain circuit of a normal person, I'm afraid that the world view will be crushed over and over again. Hokuto thought to himself. The entrance of Rear Admiral aroused a more fiery atmosphere. This challenge has also entered a white-hot stage. The success or failure of a Rear Admiral can basically be decided. What will be the outcome of today's challenge? A group of veteran Vice Admirals also looked sideways, staring at the back of Rear Admiral who walked into the training ground. So familiar. This guy, could it be Katalu? Advertisement. The flying squirrel frowned, his tone a little suspicious. It's him. The ghost spider immediately affirmed the flying squirrel's judgment. If it's Kataru, the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp is in trouble. Really, Katalu's strength, placed in the Rear Admiral, is also at the top level. However, it is still impossible to make a conclusion. After all, the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp is also a monster. So far, he has not shown the truth, and it is impossible to figure out what level his strength is at the limit. Indeed, if it wasn't for the instant kill of Karasi just now. How dare we believe that this little devil who is only 7 years old actually possesses the level of strength of Rear Admiral? A group of Vice Admirals who were severely slapped in the face just now have also begun to learn. Just like Hokuto, they didn't dare to judge the trend of this challenge again. Anyway, they can't see through Layfon who is only 7 years old. What if you get slapped in the face again? Didn't they get a slap in the face when they commented on Corsi's entry just now? That slap was too loud. They believed that Corsi could end the battle in an instant. Did not expect. The battle was indeed over in an instant. The difference however is that the one who was instantly killed was Karasi. It's rare for Katalu to enter the arena in person. This kid, can you do it? With a bit of curiosity in her beautiful eyes, Hina suppressed the many shocking emotions in her heart, and was deeply looking forward to the outbreak of the next battle. To date, many people can hardly imagine. A child who is only 7 years old, but possesses the fighting power of Rear Admiral. But the fact that happened in front of them made them have to accept it. And now, a real Rear Admiral strong, choose to enter the challenge. This makes many people look forward to it. The collision between Rear Admiral and Rear Admiral, who can win? By comparison, most people will be more inclined to the veteran Katalu Rear Admiral. Kataru Rear Admiral, this is Kizaru Admiral's subordinate. Following Kizaru Admiral, he has been fighting for many years, and his strength is much stronger than the average Rear Admiral. Even if he is ranked among many Rear Admirals, Rear Admiral can be said to be among the best. Such a powerful Rear Admiral can deal with a 7-year-old kid. Even if the 7-year-old kid's strength has reached the Rear Admiral level, I'm afraid it won't be too difficult. Yes, Kataru is Kizaru's subordinate. The other side. Sengoku, Garp, and Aokiji looked strangely, looking at Kizaru's wretched face standing beside him, and then at Kataru who walked into the training ground. You arranged. Garp couldn't help asking. No, I don't have the time to arrange these things. Kizaru quickly waved his hand, and then explained, plus, I know the strength of Layfon, a brat. If I arranged it, I wouldn't arrange it for Kataru. Why? Sengoku immediately responded directly. Because Katalu is no match for Layfon, the brat. I arrange him. Could it be that I take the initiative to arrange him to die? Kizaru couldn't help making complaints. After 3 days of training, he has a very deep understanding of Layfon's strength. Same goes up. As his subordinate, Katalu also knows the strength of Katalu. By comparing the two, a conclusion can be drawn. Unfortunately. In Kizaru's mind thinks, compared with Layfon, Katalu's strength is more than just a little bit worse. More precisely, the levels of the two are completely different. Strength is not on the same level at all. Advertisement Chapter 186 Armament Hockey. Actually I will too. Open black lens bracket 4/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. So, if Katalu was arranged by me, then I'm just out of my mind. Others don't understand Layfon's strength, so don't I know. If I arrange it, at least arrange a stronger Marine Rear Admiral. Do not. Not right. Based on my understanding of Layfon's strength, I'm afraid his strength is infinitely close to the level of Vice Admiral. If I have to arrange it, I suggest that it would be safer to arrange a Vice Admiral directly. Rear Admiral, after all, the instability factor is too high. Kizaru made this analysis. It's rare that you would speak so highly of a person. Aokiji looked at Kizaru strangely. Honestly, why not? Kizaru waved his hand lazily, he did not exaggerate. Based on his 3-day training on Layfon, plus his understanding of Layfon, he can be very sure that any Rear Admiral, no matter how experienced a Rear Admiral is, will have a hard time defeating Layfon, a brat. Layfon, the brat's strength, is infinitely close to that of Vice Admiral. Perhaps, if Vice Admiral is allowed to make a move, there will be a lot of confidence and chances of winning. But alas, Vice Admiral no shot. Otherwise, do you really think Garp's words are transparent? If Vice Admiral really makes a move, Garp will be turned upside down. Thus, basically, this challenge can be judged from the very beginning. Layfon, already invincible, without Rear Admiral, can eat Layfon steadily. There is no doubt about this. Therefore, from the beginning of this challenge, Huang Yuan was the one with the most stable mentality. Because only he can understand it more clearly than anyone else. Layfon, who is only 7 years old, is such a terrifying monster. It depends on how far Kadalu can persist. Fight the kid Layfon. The possibility is very low, almost negligible. Let's put it this way, if Layfon, a brat, doesn't take the initiative to die and release water. 353. Kadalu, there is basically no chance of defeating Layfon. Kizaru looked at the training ground in the distance. This brat is really amazing. Ja was heartbroken. Of course he couldn't imagine it. In just 3 days, Layfon not only improved his strength from Commodore to Rear Admiral. And it seems that it still belongs to the top class in Rear Admiral. How terrifying is this talent? Anyway, Aokiji didn't dare to think about what the kid Layfon had experienced in these 3 days. Why did such an outrageous change in strength occur? It's like 2 different people. Monster. Thinking of this in his heart, Aokiji also moved his eyes to the training ground, which is thousands of meters away. There are not a few people who disagree with Kizaru's opinion. Or rather, there are hundreds of thousands of official Marines, all of whom are completely different from Ziyuan's opinion. On the contrary, Kizaru believes that Kadaru's chances of defeating Layfon are slim. On the contrary, this group of Marines believes that Layfon's chances of defeating Kadalu are slim. It's about to start. All eyes were fixed on the battlefield. A group of Marines were excited and full of anticipation. Mr. Layfon, can it work? Kebi, Barumeber and others were a little worried. Pokado's eyes were fixed, his eyes were unblinking, he was engrossed, and he didn't dare to be distracted. Under the spotlight, Kadalu's footsteps gradually stopped abruptly. He was wearing a justice coat, with a burly figure and a well-crafted saber on his waist, revealing his identity as a swordsman. As Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral, Kadalu's strength should not be underestimated. His single-handed swordsmanship is simply perfect, and his attainments are quite high. Advertisement. Besides, armed color, knowledge color, marine 6 styles, these Kadalu are naturally skilled. Controlling the 2-color haki is the basic threshold for being a Marine Rear Admiral. As for Kadalu, since he is the top existence in the Rear Admiral, it is naturally impossible not to control the 2-color haki. The best in Rear Admiral, that's not an exaggeration. Compared to Corps C, his strength is infinitely closer to Rear Admiral's Marine Commodore. Kadalu's strength is obviously several times stronger than Kalexi's. 5 Koreshes added up may not be able to shake a Kadalu. This is the strength gap between Commodore and Rear Admiral. It is precisely because of this. Only after Kadalu entered the field will he give so many Marines full confidence in the field. Let everyone think together. Kadalu can easily defeat Layfon, who is only 7 years old. Pairs of expectant eyes gathered on both of them. Looked up, Kadalu slowly took out the well-crafted saber from his waist, and stared at Layfon in front of him with a serious and cautious expression. He was not careless, and he did not dare to relax. Layfon, who can kill Corps C in seconds, is enough to make Kadalu look forward to it. I don't really want to stand up. Kadaru spoke. His voice spread slowly and reached Rima's ear. Heard the words. Layfon has a playful expression, so. He lifted the samurai sword in his hand, the blade shone with cold light, the sun was shining, and the sharp blade reflected the dazzling halo, flickering endlessly. Layfon, wearing the uniform of Ensign Marine, was carrying a samurai sword that was wider than his own young figure, but he didn't reveal any sense of disobedience. Instead, a majestic sense of oppression was emitted, sweeping in all directions. This oppressive feeling enveloped Kadalu's body. Sensing the coercion of this surging breath, Kadalu's expression became more serious and dignified. Powerful, very strong. This is Tianlu's first intuitive impression of Layfon. Before that, he couldn't believe it at all. A child who is only 7 years old can actually bring him such a majestic sense of oppression. All this seems incredible, but the truth is right in front of you. Marineford, after all, it's not something you, a kid, can do whatever you want. FFLX. I stood up. Your talent is the highest among the people I've ever seen in my life. I want to see how terrifying the limit of human talent is. Besides, since I am a Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral, I naturally have an obligation to win back the game for these Marines in Marineford. We can't just sit back and watch, let a 7-year-old kid act recklessly, and finally overturn half of our Marineford. Your path will end here. My knife will end this uproarious challenge. Marineford has been arguing about it for 3 days. Today, it should be over. I will end this farce with my own hands. Kadalu held a warrior Bebef sword in his hand, his eyes flashed with a strong fighting spirit. A majestic and fierce aura emerged spontaneously from his body. The momentum is like a rainbow. Fighting spirit is burning. Kadalu's eyes were fixed on Layfon, and his whole body was entwined with majestic momentum. The oppressive feeling that made him rapidly spread hundreds of meters away. Feeling the momentum of the official Marine, the heart is determined. Kadalu Rear Admiral, it's time to go. With the strength of Kadalu Rear Admiral, there will be no surprises if he wants to win the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. Everyone thought so. At the same time, facing Kadalu's harsh words, Layfon smiled disapprovingly. Quote. If you can do it, I don't mind. But, can you really do it? I doubt it very much. Layfon narrowed his eyes slightly. The terrifying breath was released from his body. The 2 surging auras collided with each other, as if the space had produced a weak peristalsis. The battle is about to start. Advertisement. The atmosphere is depressing. The monstrous fierce aura collided with each other. Like two thunderbolts, the flickering and violent breath collided with each other. The air is filled with dense depressive elements, making one feel silent. Around. No more sound. Silence. The atmosphere fell into a dead silence. They all felt the atmosphere of a battle that was about to break out. The people who were talking a lot, swallowed all their words, and didn't dare to disturb them with too many words. A group of people had dry throats, looked full of anticipation and nervousness, and watched the trend of the battle anxiously. Feeling the oppressive atmosphere, their hearts seemed to stop beating. Immediately afterwards, fighting, silently, just explode. Fully detonate, right in plain sight. A pair of eyes full of expectation watched. BB. Kadalu took the lead in attacking Layfon with the saber in his hand. Boom. Kick off your feet. His body seemed to turn into an arrow that left the string. Cut through the sky, through the air. Even the space, because of his instantaneous burst speed, produced faint traces of creeping. At the same time, Kadalu's body disappeared directly in place. Under the feet, there is only a sunken trace that was trampled and broken. Click, click. The force remained and impacted the floor tiles under his feet, causing the sunken floor tiles to crack again densely, like a spider web of cracks spreading in all directions. Little ghost, you still have a lot to learn. After a mere Commodore, do you think that your strength is enough to shake Rear Admiral? Let me tell you today, you are lying. You have no idea how far a powerhouse at the Rear Admiral level can reach the sky. You can't understand at all what a terrifying fighting method the strong Rear Admiral controls. Like armament hockey, Kadalu's eyes were sharp, and the saber in his hand quickly condensed a layer of black armor at a speed visible to the naked eye, completely covering the blade. Like wearing a layer of indestructible steel armor, it exudes a cold and stern aura. Black armor, a katana firmly stuck in his hand. This is armament hockey. As a naval headquarters Rear Admiral, Kadaru is of course proficient in using armed colors. Moreover, his armed color proficiency is much higher than that of ordinary Rear Admirals. A start. Kadalu then planned to go all out, and did not intend to hold back the slightest. Armament hockey was fully urged by him. The blade in his hand seemed to have turned into a black jade blade, as black as ink, and exuded a sharp and oppressive aura. The majestic sense of oppression was released from Kadalu's body. Instantly. Then who told you that I can't arm myself? In an instant, the katana in Layfon's hand was already covered with a layer of black armor. The indestructible black armor is firmly set on the blade of the samurai sword, exuding a majestic yet surging fierce aura. Kadalu's figure has reached less than half a meter in front of Layfon. Seeing Kadalu's attack, Layfon's expression remained calm, without any sense of tension, but a playful smile appeared on his face. Sorry, you can see very clearly. He raised his right arm, the samurai sword in his hand flickered coldly. A majestic force surged out from Layfon's body crazily, all concentrated in his right arm. Same as Kadaru's. The samurai sword with armor-colored armor in his hand has also been slowly swung at Layfon. A method of terror controlled by Rear Admiral. Then. Armament hockey. Armed color. Actually, I will too. A layer of black armor, as if showing a liquid flow, quickly spread the fist from Layfon's right arm, and finally spread to the katana in his hand. This, too, is armament hockey. You mean. Advertisement Chapter 187. Kadalu suspected his life on the spot. Open black lens bracket 5/6 for customization close black lens bracket. Advertisement. There are also strong and weak points between armed colors and armed colors. The grade attainment of the armed color is the basis for judging the strength of the armed color. And the armed color released by Layfon at this moment, exuding a fierce aura, vaguely seems to be stronger and more concentrated than the armed color released by Kadalu. Kadalu Rear Admiral, your armed color, it seems that the attainment is not very good. Layfon's eyes twinkled, and he smiled playfully. He is holding the blade of his right arm tightly, the blade is covered with black armed armor, the cold air spreads from the blade, it looks indestructible, as if a layer of steel armor has been added. Compared with the armed armor of the blade in Kadalu's hand, it is obvious that Layfon's armed color is higher in strength and concentration. This is a very intuitive and obvious contrast. Nature. Kadalu himself also noticed this somewhat terrifying thing. Of course he couldn't think of it. Layfon, who was only 7 years old, was able to cast armament hockey. And, it seems that the proficiency of the opponent's armament hockey is much higher than his own level. How can that be? Kadaru was dumbfounded. His offensive movements have all produced some sluggishness, and his movements appear a little stiff. He stared at the young Layfon in horror, his eyes turned, and he stared fixedly at the samurai sword in Layfon's hand, the sharp black armor stained on the blade. A majestic aura of coercion was released from the blade, sweeping in all directions in an instant. Kadalu, who was in front of Layfon, was the first person who was most directly affected by this terrifying aura. This momentum. Kadalu's pupils shrank, and his facial expression changed dramatically. What's going on? How could this armed aura be so powerful? Even, it far exceeds the strength of the armed forces he controls himself. This is not scientific. This little devil who is only 7 years old has a higher level of armed color than himself. Who can explain? Why is this? The kid who is only 7 years old can not only cast armament hockey. Even, the strength level is above his majestic naval headquarters Rear Admiral. How can Kadaru believe this? He was instantly taken aback by Layfon's armed colors. All the offensive seemed to be fully resolved. The wave of attack that was finally brewing was disintegrated by Kadalu himself, his expression became shocked and suspicious, and his movement stopped abruptly. He dared not attack again. The blade in his hand seemed to be firmly locked. The sharp samurai sword that was originally cut at Layfon's body, and the samurai sword wrapped around the indestructible armed armor, froze in midair, unable to fall again. Even Kadalu's body froze. He stared at Layfon with a terrified expression, not daring to act rashly again. Layfon's armed color really shocked him severely. He thought so. His assessment of Layfon's strength is already very high, but he never expected that he still seriously underestimated the level of Layfon's strength in front of him. This level of armament hockey, even he himself can't use it. But, he saw it from a child who was only 7 years old. This kid's armed color is higher than the armed color he honed for thousands of years. Seriously unreasonable. How old is this kid? Your armed color. Kadaru's throat was dry, and he froze in front of Layfon for a moment. He was dumbfounded. His thinking became a mess. What the hell? What did he see? A kid who is only 7 years old, the level of armed color is higher than him. He is already 40 this year. It has been nearly 10 years since I took control of the armed color. 10 years. How did he spend 10 years? Armed color, honed for a full 10 years. 10 years of training in the armed forces allowed him to have the strength of the armed forces he has today. But how old is this little devil in front of him? Age. Advertisement. How long have you been practicing armed color? A year. 2 years. With all the calculations, it will definitely not exceed 5 years. Could it be? This kid was exposed to armed color when he was 2 years old. What kind of international joke is this? Can a 2-year-old's physical fitness withstand the burden brought by armed lust to the body? Non-existent. But what's going on, little brat? He's only 7 years old. The level of armed color strength is higher than mine. Could it be that he has been exposed to armed colors since his mother's womb? What kind of monster is this? Kadalu's view of cognition has been completely overturned. He has worked hard for 10 years to cultivate his own armed color to this level. But right now, he saw that the strength level of the armed color controlled by a child who was only 7 years old far exceeded the armed color he had cultivated for 10 years. This naturally made Kadalu unbelievable. He doubted life on the spot. After 10 years of hard work, the relationship is not as good as the results of years of hard work by others. This must be too outrageous. Also, this is still a 7-year-old kid. No matter how high the talent is, there is no reason to be so scary. This must be an illusion. Kadalu suppressed the horror in his heart and swallowed. But the terrifying sense of oppression emanating from Layfon's body swept across Kadalu's body all the time, oppressing his body. In particular, the coldness from the colored armor in Layfon's hands, and the cold air, made Kadalu only feel the cold on his back and the cold sweat on his forehead. Illusion. Is this horse riding an illusion? I always feel that if I move a little bit, this brat will suppress me on the spot. As one or two of these brats so ferocious? At first. Kadalu also intends to let Layfon see what a strong rear admiral is. Only those who have mastered the weapons and knowledge can naturally be called rear admiral. Therefore, Kadalu wants Layfon to feel what a terrifying method armament hockey is. And what a powerful existence rear admiral is. He wanted Layfon to understand. Marineford, not a place where Layfon can be unscrupulous. But after all, as a result, Kadalu's worldview collapsed. He is proud of the armed color. Not only does Layfon also master the strength level of Dongshi, which is higher than his own. This invisible strong contrast seemed to form a slapping Kadalu's face fiercely, making his face a little painful at the moment. Armed color only controlled by rear admiral level powerhouses. Terribly sorry. The other party will too. Moreover, the intensity level is higher. This brought Kadalu's mentality close to the brink of collapse. What the hell? Before he could show off, he slapped Layfon on the opposite side, causing Kadalu's forehead to buzz and his thinking to become rigid. This blow is too heavy. It directly overturned the self-confidence that Ka Tianlu held before. Even though he had been mentally prepared for a long time, he knew that Layfon's strength had reached the rear admiral level. But when he actually saw Layfon displaying his armed color, Kadalu was still stunned. Layfon's armed color level is higher than that controlled by Kadalu himself. What kind of monster was I just now, showing off that I know armament hockey? Whether I count it as lifting a rock and shooting myself in the foot. Recalling his careful posture just now, Kadalu's face was aching, the corners of his mouth were twitching constantly, his eyes were filled with horror, and his mood was so shocked that it was difficult to calm down. Asking for flowers. He suddenly regretted it. How nice it would be to not need armed colors. Everyone needn't be armed. Advertisement. It's over now. He used the armed color in advance, so that Layfon on the opposite side also used the armed color. But here comes the problem. His armed color and level are no longer at the same level as Layfon's armed color. But the most important thing is that he himself does not know. How did a 7-year-old kid manage to control armament hockey? Not only that, but the level of the armed color controlled by the other party is much higher than that of Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral who has cultivated armed color for 10 years. This naturally made Kadalu express that it was very difficult to accept. He had cultivated for 10 years before he could barely reach this level of armed color. And this kid who is only 7 years old, why should he? Why is the level of armed color higher than his? I have practiced for 10 years. Only then has the armed color strength of today. This kid, how long has he been pretending? Unfair. It's a pity that even if Kadalu wailed unwillingly, it would be difficult to change the current situation. 0. Doesn't help. Things have developed like this. No matter how unwilling to cry, it doesn't make any sense. Then, the situation is so deadlocked. Around, hundreds of thousands of Marines watch the eerie battlefield. Feel the weird atmosphere. No one knows why. What's going on? Didn't the fight break out? But what is going to happen in this weird situation now? Kadalu Rear Admiral, not menacing, ready to strike. Why did Mao suddenly stop? Why did the offensive stall? This is not right. They were still preparing, cheering and cheering for Tianlu. But when they saw the scene in front of them, their cheering voices got stuck in their throats and could no longer be heard, and they looked at Kadalu with suspicious and puzzled faces. Here, what's the situation? A group of people were puzzled. Kadalu Rear Admiral, you go. It's just a 7-year-old brat, but you are Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral. That's right, Kadalu Rear Admiral, we believe. With your strength, you can easily kill the grandson of Vice Admiral Garp. What is there to fear when dealing with a 7-year-old kid? You are the Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral, how can you be restrained? Let us show the majesty of our Naval Headquarters Rear Admiral. We can't let this brat continue to show off unscrupulously. Kadalu Rear Admiral, the dignity of our half Marineford Marine is up to you. No, the dignity of half of our Marineford rests on you. At the critical moment, you can't lose the chain. How does this make our Marineford's Marine feel? You go, you go. You guys, your heart can be punished, soil. Question mark quote. A group of dogs who stand and talk without back pain. Stop shouting. Wouldn't that make me die? If I dare to go up, why am I still in a stalemate? Do you want you to cheer by the side? Are you teaching me how to do things? Damn thing. The key is, the sound is loud and resounds in all directions. This still makes me rush up. I'm not even sure about it myself. Everyone shouted loudly. How did I know that this 7-year-old monster is actually Grandmaster Armament Hockey? And the level seems to be much higher than my armed color level. Immediately, this made Kadalu sweat coldly in the battlefield. Call a hammer. If I dare to go up, I still use you to teach. Advertisement.